obviously deep in the European earnings season. Take a look at how we're faring when it comes to Asian markets.
The S&P 500 has scored 25 record closes on a 3-month rolling basis. It's a testament to strong momentum in stock market performance, but also maybe a warning sign that the winning streak is becoming stretched. Bloomberg found that a pullback once the market reaches the milestone of 25 records is often followed by further gains, though. Let's bring in Andrew Slimman, Senior Portfolio Manager at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. Andrew, this is something that you've talked about, that yes, things are looking stretched, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to reverse. So what do you do at this point? Do you just continue to ride the market to continue new highs?
Well, it depends. I guess it depends whether you're talking about new cash or existing cash. Existing cash, I certainly wouldn't be pulling out of the market as we go into the fourth quarter. I think one of the problems for the people that have been on the sidelines is we're just not getting that pullback. And I think a lot of people come on your show and say things like, oh, I expect a 3 to 5% pullback. Well, if everyone's expecting a 3 to 5% pullback, you know you ain't going to get that. And I suspect either you get a deeper pullback or no pullback, the market continues higher. And I think we didn't get one this summer, and the market is typically a lot more vulnerable in the summer than it is in the fourth quarter. So look, I agree, the market's stressed. It's getting a little frothy. I just don't see, as we go into the year end, with enough investors, retail and professional, that are behind the ball, looking for opportunities. I just don't see the market going down.
How is everybody not fully invested at this point, Andrew? I seem to remember some regional Fed saying U.S. households, for example, are more overweight stocks than they've ever been, in the history of the universe since the Big Bang. So who has more money to deploy?
Well, first of all, they're overweight. That because the market's gone up more than the money market doesn't mean on an absolute basis investors still have a lot of the money market. I did a call with a financial advisor who had a client on last week saying, gosh darn it, I'm not getting my 5% risk free anymore. We got to do something with the money. So as the Fed cuts rates, money markets are not going to be as attractive, and people will start to look for a home for that money. It's not all equities. It's going to go into other higher returning risk assets, but it's going to come out of the money market. So I just don't buy that argument, because I hear over and over, and I see the flows. As the Fed is cutting rates, money is coming into the market because the alternative short term. Back in 2023, I think we had this conversation. I said, the market's down 25%. You got to get invested, in the number one pushback I got.
Hey, Andrew, we'll see if more of that investment comes. You're going to stick with us, but we have to get to break so we can get to the market open. That's Andrew Slimman. As we head to another update after yesterday's decline, after back-to-back all-time records, the future's up 0.2%. Your opening bell coming up in just about 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on YouTube and simulcasting on X Spaces. I'm also live streaming on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So please watch through those different modalities or listen. If you have any questions, just type in the chat based on the news that I'm covering today. Let's focus on just the news that we're covering today. This is being recorded and live streamed on September 24th. I will release this on all the channels I have. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all those channels. Ask your social media to follow me. If you like the content that I produce, please help support. You can support many different ways. Share the links. You can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee on the homepage. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel or my Substack. I have created a new channel on Substack, so you can help support my work that way too. All the content I produce is for free. So please help support by donating, being a paid subscriber, even though the content is for free. It's through the help of the donations and the paid subscribers that allows me to do this for free for everybody. I think the content that I provide is very important for your health and for your finances. Now, there's lots to learn from the content I produce. I'm telling you how the market is starting to evolve throughout the year. If you've been paying attention to me since April, you would have been making money. So please pay attention and you will benefit from the free information I provide. Also, I have great products on my store, ebooks, supplements, and course material on immunology and pulmonology that you can purchase to help support the work that I do. So before the market opens, well, the market just opened. So let's take a look at where the S&P 500 is at. So the S&P 500 is trading at 6,671. VIX is at 1634. Euro is trading at 1.17. Oil is trading at $64 a barrel and 34 cents. BITO is trading at 19.44. Bitcoin is trading at 113,000. Japanese yen is trading at 148.69, and natural gas is trading at 2.843. I have a target of 6,800 to 7,000 for the S&P 500 by year end. Now, the immediate resistance point is 6,700 and the support level is 6,500. So pay attention to that. As it's getting closer and closer to 6,700, it might get faded and come back down. You saw that the last couple trading sessions or so. So pay attention to that. Once there is more news starting to trickle from the Federal Reserve that another rate cut is going to take place this year, most likely we'll surpass that 6,700 number and creep up to 6,800. But I still have a target range of 6,800 to 7,000 by year end. You've been paying attention to me when the S&P 500 was at 4,820 or 30 in April, you would have made a ton of money. So, there was a lot of podcasters out there saying it was the end of the world, and I said, no, it wasn't. So once again, if you listen to me, you'll benefit. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I have and the products. You need to prepare for the fall and the winter. If you've been paying attention to what's happening in the wastewater, I don't have to say the name because of the censorship, but the bottom line is this: if you don't prepare, you are increasing your chances of having problems. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the products that I tell you to get. Structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in charcoal tea tree, lemongrass, lavender, and also peppermint. Get a few bars for your household. These are structural nano silver soaps that I use every day. They're very high quality. Get a few bars for your household. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. But another great supplement to prepare for the fall and the winter, but something that you should be doing every day. I do this every day. Take the Max 35 or the Cleanse. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Take a teaspoon a day. Swish in your mouth, gargle about 30 seconds or so, and then swallow it. What that will do is improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx. That's the back of your throat. Improve your mucosal lining. Improve the health of the epithelial cells that are in your oropharynx and boost up that immune system. Super important to do every day. And you do that as part of an anti-aging protocol. But what it does is it boosts up your immune system. And it's extremely important to take. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, especially during the fall and the winter season, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. And then go back to your maintenance dose when everything's all clear. But it's really important to stock up. If you're not prepared, don't be surprised something happens.
When you look across the United States, we have underinvested in transmission lines. The reality is there's about 2,500 gigawatts of capacity in development that is waiting to get on the grid, a staggering number. But we need the transmission lines to get it on the grid. To date, it takes about 7 years in the US to build these transmission lines. With fast tracking permitting and other work with states, you can cut that time in half, and some would say even more than that, which is a meaningful unlock.
We're gonna go to live now. There was a shooting in Dallas. It looks like at ICE facility. Suspect dead, 3 detainees shot.
Other side of us of people trying to turn around and trying to get through, they're all being directed to leave this area and that they cannot drive through here. We see, you know, a law firm here in this area along with several other businesses here. So we will see how long this plays out. We know, of course, that area of 35 is shut down. We actually exited off of 35 and we were in that area near Empire, and there was a heavy police presence there, and they told us we had to kind of go up and turn around. We couldn't pull over in that area either, and that is where we saw quite a few ambulances and first responders from multiple agencies here in this area working this scene right now. Back to you.
All right, Shannon, thanks. We are going to go to a phone interview right now with former FBI agent, what did you say the name was?
Kenneth Gray.
Kenneth Gray, thank you. All right, Kenneth, what can you tell us? You've been listening to this, I assume, all morning. What can you tell us, or what do you know so far?
First attack against an ICE facility. Back during the summertime, there was an attack on the Prairie Land Detention Facility in Alvarado, Texas. The person responsible for that, Benjamin Song, was arrested by the FBI, and he's allegedly a member of a Texas Antifa group. So I would not be surprised if this shooting there was also Antifa connected.
Okay, what as you've been watching this develop, what could maybe some insight you might be able to shed here on how this scene is constructed, how it's been played out this morning? You've still got officers on the access road. Traffic is now flowing on I-35E. Does that mean, or can we draw from that the threat level has been decreased?
Yes, absolutely. So the emergency is over. That is, that the shooter is down, neutralized, committed suicide when officers approach. So the threat is greatly diminished. And now it transitions over to a crime scene. There'll be a collection of any type of rounds found in the area. There'll be a collection of the weapon. The shooter himself will, the body will be taken possession of by the coroner's office. All these things will be done as if it were any other shooting there and be investigated as a crime. But the emergency itself has been resolved.
Okay. Former FBI agent Kenneth Gray, appreciate your.
All right, I'm gonna go and transition to Fox News, Fox Business. They're talking about Bessent's blunt bailout warning for New York City.
Zero helps me take my business anywhere I want.
Tell me this. What is greatness made of? Is it in your drive? How are you possessed?
Welcome back. Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Barcelona, and I hope you're having a good morning. It is Wednesday, September 24th. It is just before 8 a.m. on the East Coast. President Trump delivering a fiery speech yesterday at the 80th United Nations General Assembly. He called out world leaders right to their faces over their failures within their own countries. He touted America's success, and he told you the impact of wide open borders. Watch.
We are rapidly reversing the economic calamity that we inherited from the previous administration. That energy costs are down, gasoline prices are down, grocery prices are down, mortgage rates are down, and inflation has been defeated. The only thing that's up is the stock market, which just hit a record high. Growth is surging, manufacturing is booming, and workers' wages are rising at the fastest pace in more than 60 years. In my first term, I built the greatest economy in the history of the world, but this time it's actually much bigger and even better.
President Trump, meanwhile, canceled his planned meetings with Democrats, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. They were supposed to meet on Thursday, but he's calling their demands to avert a government shutdown unserious and ridiculous. He left the door open for future negotiations, however. Meanwhile, the Treasury and the IRS outlining this week which workers could qualify for the no tax on tips deduction in President Trump's big, beautiful bill. Joining me now to talk all about that is the U.S. Treasury Secretary of this great nation, Scott Bessent. Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you.
Maria, always good to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. You have so much on your plate. And first, I want to thank you for all that you're doing, Secretary. Thank you.
Well, Maria, it's all the president. It's easy to follow his lead, and it's so exciting.
I've been following markets for a long time, more than 25 years. All right. He is the best Treasury Secretary that we have had since my lifetime.
When the policies the American people elected him. The American people elected him for change, and he is doing it every day. Can you believe it? It's just been 8 or 9 months.
No.
The amount that he's gotten done.
No, I cannot believe it's only 8 months. Tell me about that speech yesterday at the UN. What was your biggest takeaway of President Trump calling out others on that stage?
Well, President Trump, as you know, Maria, is all about solutions. Why have we accepted that things don't work? He asked, like, why is the federal government not delivering for people? Why are our cities unsafe? So he came to New York, and he has great respect for the United Nations, but he called them out for it not working. The president has done 7 peace deals, and the UN never got in contact with him. How does that work? He called out the rest of the world and our allies for their failures, whether it's on immigration, on energy, on their economies. And he excoriated them, but then he said, this is American leadership. Come with us. If you want to, we will lead.
Yeah.
And, Maria, this is what American leadership looks like. And I think people missed it for 4 years, whether in the US or on the world stage, and the US is back.
A lot of common sense there on policy. All right. So Jay Powell yesterday signaled that the Federal Reserve is going to move slowly on interest rates. He also said the stock market was high. I don't know why he said that and why he would wade into that territory. But what is your thought about the macro story right now? I want to get your take on where we are with regard to economic growth and what's ahead.
Clearly, the Federal Reserve has been too high for too long, and we're going into an easing cycle here. And I'm not sure why Chair Powell has backed up a bit here, because, as we can see, we inherited a mess. And it's unclear now. We've had almost 2 million downward revisions in the jobs number. There was almost no private job creation in the Biden administration. And with these revisions, we know that something was wrong beneath the hood. And now we could see in terms of the housing market that affects consumers, working Americans, rates are too restrictive. They need to come down. And I think we will go into a cycle. And I'm a bit surprised that the chair hasn't signaled that we have a destination before the end of the year of at least 100 to 150 basis points. And I will add, President Trump's pick for the Federal Reserve Board, Stephen Myron, Stephen has said more in a week more in a week than the Biden administration appointees had said during their entire tenure.
Yeah.
And
Well, he wanted a 50 basis point cut, Jay Powell cut 25 basis points. Stephen Myron wanted 50.
well, these meetings are supposed to be a discussion. You're supposed to go into them with an open mind. And, I think not unlike the UN, we've seen a lot of mistakes, a lot of rigidities. And, it's good to get some new blood in there.
Who would be your best pick for chairman of the Fed at this point?
Maria, I'm interviewing 11 candidates. We've got a couple who have surprised me in the strength of their candidacy during the interviews.
Okay.
And
Who surprised you?
I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk specifics.
So you don't want to break that news right now?
Maria, if I could, I would, because you're my favorite, but I'm going to be interviewing more candidates this week. We respected the Fed's quiet period, and we didn't interview any sitting Federal Reserve board members or presidents. So there's going to be a lot of interviews next week. I think the first round will be done for first week of October. Then we'll start another round, and I look forward to being able to discuss it with President Trump, present him with 3 or 4 very strong candidates.
Do you think, given what we've seen in the labor market for the last 3 months, we've seen this weakening in the last 3 months. I don't know if you believe the numbers or not at this point, but do you think that tiptoes into recession at some point?
I am less concerned about a recession. I'm concerned about the distributional aspects that we've got going here. I'm concerned that working Americans are getting hit harder just because of the high rates. I'm concerned that a lot of the housing affordability crisis is on the mortgage side. So, I am very concerned, and I believe that we do need rate relief. We need to get at least back to neutral.
Isn't it odd that when you talk about lower rates and the Fed expected to cut another time, at least once more, that rates go up? Do you think it's a certainty that as the Fed lowers rates that you're actually going to see a real impact on, for example, mortgage rates?
I do believe that we are seeing, we'll see a substantial drop in inflation. I think that the housing numbers are done through imputed rent, that we're going to see, they run on about a 6-month lag. Everything that President Trump is doing in terms of deregulation, which I think is the underrated, the third leg of his economic policy, that's all disinflationary, and we'll see what happens with this AI boom. Back when the railroads came in, we had this wonderful inflationary growth. At the end of the century, we had the same thing in the 1990s, and everyone asked me, what am I looking for when I interview potential Federal Reserve chair? And it's just someone with an open mind, who's not looking in the rearview mirror, who's looking forward, who thinks maybe this could be like the 90s, where we saw the office electronics came in, we saw the internet boom. So could the AI boom be like that? Could we have a disinflationary period? Is our star, if it exists, going to move up or down? What's Nehru? So I want somebody who's looking forward, not backward.
It's such an interesting scenario to look at AI, because
imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation.
scenario to look at AI, because on the one hand, that AI is going to replace some jobs, right? Obviously. But on the other hand, we didn't know we needed coders 20 years ago. We didn't know we needed all these engineers. So other jobs, even in energy, will be created. But do you have a plan for those jobs that will go away as a result of artificial intelligence?
Maria, we don't. We're working on it now. We actually have what I call an AI czar at Treasury, and she is developing a plan, a roadmap that can help us with the U.S. economy. I'll be talking about that in speeches this fall. And we don't know which way it's going to go. And then, again, I think we got to have an open mind. But one of the things, as you know better than anyone, President Trump's trying to bring back precision manufacturing jobs to the U.S., the blue collar boom that we're going to see. And those jobs aren't going to be taken by AI.
Yeah, I love what President Trump is doing with the supply chain. It is so important. And I understand this is national security. We're all wondering if there's sort of an outlier out there that is going to turn things around. And I want to get your take on Argentina, because Mr. Secretary, Argentina's peso sliding. politics and capital outflows rattling investors there. Javier Milei, I guess, has lost the confidence of investors. They're pulling their money out of Argentina. They're fearful that he will scrap his defense of the peso. You say all options are on the table, from swap lines to direct currency support. What's the plan in terms of supporting Argentina? Is there one?
The plan is, as long as President Milei continues with his strong economic policies to help him, to bridge him to the election. I call this the screens moving to the streets. We are not going to let a disequilibrium in the market cause his backup in his substantial economic reforms. I don't think the market has lost confidence in him. I think the market is looking in the rearview mirror and is looking at decades, if not a century, of terrible Argentinian mismanagement. And people are concerned. People are skittish. It's very hard to believe that it is different this time. But I believe with President Milei, it is. It is.
The president is also pledging strong backing. He's calling for Javier Milei's reforms critical for that stability that you're talking about. But Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, says that this is a taxpayer-funded bailout and is more about politics than U.S. interests. What do you want to say to Elizabeth Warren here?
Well, I tweeted it out yesterday. Senator Warren and her protege, Mr. Mondami, who's running for mayor of New York, they are American Peronists. They want to do to the U.S. economy what the Perones, the General Anavita did to the U.S. They want to take control. So, and I guarantee you, and there are not a lot of things in life that are sure, that New York City will be coming to the federal government for a bailout if the Mondami plans are implemented.
And are you going to give them that bailout?
It will be the same thing that Gerald Ford said. Drop dead.
Drop dead. Look, oh my God. I mean, when you're talking about this mayoral race, this is the capital of, the capital of capitalism, right? I mean, New York's mayor race matters, right, for the country.
It does, but you can't enact policies like this and expect to be bailed out.
Yeah.
I lived here in the 80s. David Dinkins was a very nice man, but I remember rejoicing the night Rudy Giuliani was elected and the city went on this great path that we all took for granted. Giuliani, the Bloomberg, and then Bill de Blasio came in, terrible leadership. Things sort of went sideways under Eric Adams, and this lurched down under Mondami. Everyone who stayed now wants to leave.
Yeah.
All the high earners, all the businesses. And if we go back over the past 5 years, we have seen the greatest transfer of wealth in U.S. history from Manhattan County to Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
The Mondami could be the greatest thing for Florida real estate.
Unbelievable. Do you think we're going to see a government shutdown next week? I mean, you've got this that is on your plate as well. I'm sure you've been talking to lawmakers about fund.
Let me just plug a product here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift till supplies last. That free gift you are going to need for the fall and the winter. Trust me. Another very important product that I have is the structural nano silver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation at the gum line, and help the health of your gum line. Super important. With good oral hygiene, it improves your cardiovascular health and also your valvular health. Poor oral hygiene can cause problems vascularly. So it's important to have good oral hygiene, especially when you get older into your geriatric years. But because of the structural nanosilver toothpaste, you should be taking this for the fall and the winter. Be prepared. Be prepared. Trust me, I'm telling you, something's coming in the United States, and you better get prepared. It's already starting in larger cities, so just pay attention. Go to my store, get a few tubes of this toothpaste, be prepared. Fall and winter, I can't tell it enough. And another thing that you need to get is the gel. This is dual purpose. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can use it as an aftershave. You can put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, and it'll help to heal it quicker. Why? Because it keeps it clean. And if you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well at home or at school or even at work, put this on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils, stays active for 5.5 hours. Guess what? You can't do that with Perel. This is the best that you can get. Go to my store, be prepared. The fall and the winter is going to be problematic.
Government.
Maria, I don't know. What I can tell you is that the Democratic proposals are unserious, that they, this 1.5 trillion, they blew out the deficit when they were in charge. We're not going to let them do it this time. Senator Schumer did the right thing in the spring, compromise, brought Democratic senators along, kept the government open. But, again, you've seen Senator Schumer's poll numbers. He's got AOC nipping at his heels.
Yeah.
He talks about Social Security a lot. I think it's because he's afraid he's going to be out of the Senate and have to draw it down.
Well, I mean, look, you're talking about expiring Obamacare, Affordable Care Act subsidies. I guess for 22 million Americans. And what we learned this week was that they also want those subsidies for illegals, right, in this country. Is that what they want in this package before agreeing to fund the government?
Well, let's go back to President Trump's speech at the UN yesterday, and it really parallels what the Democrats have tried to do to America. He talked about how countries have open borders. That's what the Democrats tried to do to us. He talked about this emphasis on renewables and how we got behind the curve on energy security and energy dominance. That's what the Democrats want to do to America. We talk about the sky-high debt. That's what the Democrats did to America. President Trump's not going to let them do it. And I have great confidence in him, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune.
Yeah.
And we will get to the other side of this. But the Democrats don't understand. President Trump was elected for change to right the ship. And we're not going to let them bring down the.
Well, they still don't like what's in the big, beautiful bill. And you worked so hard on that. And I know for a while you were saying President Trump is doing tax deals, peace deals, and what tax deals, peace deals,
and trade deals.
And trade deals. Thank you. Because I thought that was so spot on. And I've been using that as well. In terms of the big, beautiful bill, the no tax on tips elements, how do we know which tips are not?
Apply for a new place from any place, just a single click.
How do we know which tips are not taxed? Do you want to tell us who's eligible for no tax on tips?
Well, Maria, it's a big list. I'm also the IRS commissioner now, so you can go to the IRS website. We are outlining that. And what we're not going to do is let people game the system. We have records of who's gotten substantial tip income.
Yeah.
And again, this is the strongest point of the bill, because on one side, it gave full depreciation to businesses, so it's spurring a CapEx boom. On the other side, it was President Trump's unique blend of economics for working Americans, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and interest deductibility if you buy an American car. And I think what's going to be very interesting here is most Americans have not changed their withholding for 2025. So they'll be getting substantial refunds in 2026. They'll change their withholding in January, and they will get an automatic take-home pay increase. So I think 2026 could be a great year for working Americans.
That is big. Do you want to see a second reconciliation package? And would you propose a cut in capital gains taxes in it?
We'll see. I'm not going to get in front of the president here, but I think all options are on the table. Right now at Treasury, we were tasked with, along with the White House, along with the Senate and the House, getting the bill across the line. That was pass-fail. No one believed it could be done by July 4th. President Trump's leadership, with assistance from Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, unbelievable. It was done on July 4th. At Treasury, we're in charge of implementation. So we're just worried about implementing this one in a fast, reliable, and safe way for the American people.
Mr. Secretary, a lot of viewers want to hear about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and you've got big plans here. The last time we were on the show, we discussed the portions of these companies going public. You're gonna take what, 5% or between 3 and 6% of them public. Everybody's buzzing about this $30 billion IPO, possibly the largest IPO we've seen, more than the Saudi Aramco deal. What can you tell us about the plans here? What do you want to do?
Well, Maria, I can tell you that we are moving forward, but in a very deliberate fashion. And we will have announcements in the coming months. But the IPO is important, but the really important thing here is that we either maintain mortgage spreads or narrow them further to help the American people. So as we are negotiating this sale of a government stake, we want a fair price, a good price for the taxpayer, because this is going to be a lot of money for Treasury. But the most important thing here is that mortgage rates stay benign or even get better for American people, because we're in this housing affordability crisis. We talked about it. I think the Fed lowering rates will bring it down, and we are working on this every day. So, but with Fannie and Freddie, our North Star is mortgage rates and then the sale to the public.
Well, there's a lot of ways to do that, right? The sale to the public. And I'm sure you're looking at different ways in terms of doing this. Every bank wants in on it. Investors think this is going to be, I mean, would this be a good investment for someone who's looking at buying interest? Tell me about these companies.
Look, these are the American dream, their American home ownership. It is the American government. These are regulated entities that, excuse me, went astray during the financial crisis. They were mismanaged, and we are going to make sure that they have proper governance. And when we bring them public, I don't want to talk about perspective, but I can tell you everything will be in place for their success. I think that they are unique as financial institutions. I think that they are unique as consumer institutions. And we are looking for a range of institutional investors who will be long-term holders, but we also want the American people and small shareholders to have a stake in these companies too. We want them to be part of the American dream.
The idea of government owning portions of public companies, this is something that free market people have to get their heads around. They're not clear about your agenda. So walk us through what you're thinking. The government took a 10% stake in Intel. The government is talking about taking a stake in a minerals company. The government will own, obviously, conservatorship with these companies, even if they sell 5% of it. What should we think about that? Because some people say, well, look, if government owns a portion of a company, then that's going to mean that that company gets better treatment than another company. For example, I spoke with the CEO of Figure, who's also a mortgage originator. Here's what he said. Watch this. In terms of the market.
At KPMG, we make the difference by helping you turn risk management into a strategic asset that earns trust. Our specialists work alongside our clients to proactively identify and address vulnerabilities before they become problems. Let's build resilience, earn trust, and make the difference together.
If your pet goes from weird to weirder, grouchy to grouchier.
In terms of the market that is available to you right now, the potential market, what would that look like?
One of the big ones that we're going after is first lien mortgage. So we're now competing directly with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, using blockchain technology as an advantage. And for certainly loans under $500,000, we're winning in that competition right now.
And Fannie and Freddie are likely going to see their own IPOs once again, right? President Trump expected to take 5% of those companies public. Does that sort of even pony up the competition that much further?
Well, we like competing against them as private enterprises. They get a little bit of an unfair advantage as a government-backed entity, but so it levels the playing field a little bit. But right now we're winning irrespective.
So broadly speaking, is it an unfair advantage when government has a stake in a public company, and you could look at Fannie Mae, you could look at Intel?
Well, Maria, there are decisions that the U.S. government makes that we believe is good for society. We believe home ownership is good. So therefore, The government wants to be involved. And I can tell you, like having come into government for the private sector, that what we have seen here is that there was a breakdown in our supply chains. And whether during COVID, whether it was semiconductors, whether we're seeing it with the Chinese putting export controls on rare earths. So there are some things for national security or that we have made the decision as a society we want to do. But I can tell you, like the Intel stake, it's now been validated that NVIDIA's come in and taken a stake. The biggest company in the world. President Trump, again, he looks for solutions. Well, why were we subsidizing Intel? Why shouldn't the American taxpayer have some of the upside?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You're monetizing the balance sheet.
But monetizing the balance sheet, because I can tell you, every day President Trump wants to be the president who creates assets for the American people, not debt. Not debt.
So you'll be investing in more companies if it meets that national security requirement.
Well, again, we realize that across 5, 6, 7 industries, we are so vulnerable, and we've got to do something about that. There's a group of us in the government led by President Trump who believes that when we leave in January 29, that we will have failed if we have not made resilient supply chains for these key industries, and we're not going to fail.
Is China going to go along with all of this? What can you tell us about the rare earth minerals flow from China? Is it going to flow?
It is flowing, and look, we're not without levers on our side. We have plenty of products that they depend on us for, so there is a back and forth. We do not want to decouple from China. We need to de-risk.
And in terms of those rare earth magnets and minerals, they were pushing back. What is the leverage point? Is it airplane parts? What is the leverage point with China?
There's a big group of products, but it could be aircraft engines and aircraft parts. It could be certain chemicals that are used in production of plastics. It could be the ingredients for silicon.
Okay.
And it's a wide range.
Secretary, I want to take a short break and then come back because your portfolio also includes the sanctions, and we've got Russia on the move and China on the move. We'll take a short break and come right back with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Stay with us.
All right, I'm going to go to a very important BBC show that was last night, and we have to put it in the context of what I have mentioned on other videos. Remember what I said about how the central bank in England cannot do quantitative tightening, and that what will happen is that there's going to be an orchestrated story to increase the war in Ukraine against Russia. Because that will create an environment where almost always when there's a war, you have to create more dollars to maintain that war effort. So as an excuse to not to do quantitative tightening, you continue a war in the Eastern Front of Europe against Russia, all right? Couple that with Putin not willing to take the off-ramp from Trump. So there's two dynamics going on here. But there's a debt cliff because of over-indebtedness in England. They're having instability because of immigration. They're having illegal immigration. They're having instability with Muslims in certain cities within England. They have social programs that they can't afford. They have inflation and a rising issue with labor, job creation. They're having an issue with job creation. And the rates for the bonds that are issued by the government are too high for them to service the debt. So they have a problem. Now, France is in a similar situation. Very similar situation. Same dynamics with the social unrest and the financial issues. So they have a lot of social programs, France and England, that they can't afford. So you also have a large balance sheet at the central bank because of the Lehman crash and COVID. That central banks have been slowly titrating into the market. Quantitative tightening is basically they take assets that are on the balance sheet and sell it back into the market. Well, that means that you're extinguishing dollars. You're extinguishing money that was created during the crisis or crises. Now, if you have a society that can't absorb the higher rates because there's more of this asset in the market that people don't want, the rates will go up. These bonds or commercial paper. So the rates are going to continue to go up, and that's part of the problem, that they can't revolve the debt because the rates are too high. So if you orchestrate a war, it kicks the can down the road so the central bank doesn't have to do the quantitative tightening and cause the problem in the society. Now, I'm not the only one that has seen this. There's other individuals that are saying that the Balkans, there's going to be a flare up in the Balkans, orchestrated by the UK. Now, what did we hear just a week ago? We heard about the planes flying over Estonia. What did we hear last night from Donald Trump? That Ukraine should be taking the land back from Russia. That's a complete reversal of what he was saying a couple months ago. So there's this coordinated effort between the United States and the UK and NATO, where they're setting in motion and discussing Article 4 and preparing for an event that will activate Article 5. And that's, on the surface, it's going to be fight against Russia, fight against Putin. But there's a deeper reason. And that is because the central banks in Europe can't do quantitative tightening. They can't afford it. They can't do it. That's going to be a problem. So before we play that BBC video, which talks about military technology, keep it in the context that the central bank can't do quantitative tightening, and the politics in Europe is moving towards war. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. Zeolite will remove heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals from your body. Super important. What that does, it'll bind. The zeolite will bind to those toxins and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. You should be taking this every day. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. Do that every day. Now, when you detoxify your body with zeolite, you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system and your other bodily systems to perform better, including cerebral. So please go to my store, get the zeolite, and boost up that immune system. You're going to need that, especially for the fall and winter. Why? Because you're going to need a very robust immune system because something bad is coming. Be prepared. Another thing that you need to get for the fall and the winter is nattokinase. It'll break up clots. It's fibrinolytic, super important. It also helps with the lipid profile. Help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. Taking nattokinase is going to help your vascular system if you take it every day. But it'll also help you to weather the storm that's coming in the fall and the winter.
Gambling with World War III. A peacekeeping force does not exist with a ceasefire. Iraqi nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Any regime attempts to create a security vacuum have been historically catastrophic.
Hello, welcome to the security brief. New look, same format, hopefully the same forward-looking analysis. We're going to focus today on the arms race, specifically the advent of hypersonic weapons, weapons that travel at 5 times the speed of sound. They have been with us for some years, but there have been some huge advances of late, so a certain amount of catch-up going on in the West. But a lot of the focus now shifting to defence, space-based interceptors. Are we entering the era of the space wars? We'll get a view on who is developing what from our security correspondent, Frank Gardner, and of course here with me in the studio, our resident analyst and former British military strategic planner, Mikey Kay.
Christian,
Mike, do you like the new look?
I'm delighted with it, actually. I'm not sure we've got anywhere to go after here, but it's good.
Let's start with the what. What is a hypersonic weapon?
So you just articulated it's Mach 5 plus 5 times the speed of sound, but also the speeds go way higher. There is talk of some evolution of technology in the hypersonic world going beyond Mach 20. Okay, so massively fast missile-based systems. Now, where they differ, Christian, from the intercontinental ballistic missile, which is the furthest range ballistic missile that to date has been designed, is an intercontinental ballistic missile effectively takes a predicted parabolic trajectory. Okay, so when it's fired, the warhead will enter into low Earth orbit space, and they'll spend around 20 minutes within that parabolic before it then comes down. What's been involved in terms of a counter to that is the predictability of the parabolic curve. Now, these are supersonic, so they'll reach speeds of Mach 2 plus. When we come to the hypersonic missile, it's not doing the parabolic. It's doing a speed that is way faster, as we said, in excess of Mach 5, but it has what's called a hypersonic glide system or a hypersonic body. And what that means is that when the warhead separates from the missile, it can then have boosters on it that it doesn't take the parabolic trajectory, and it can basically maneuver in the final phases of flight, which basically means it's really hard to counter and it's really hard to shoot out.
Yeah, and that maneuverability is one of the things we're going to focus on. But the reason we're talking about it this week is because it's been in the news. This idea that the US is deploying new weapons, and specifically the Typhoon to Japan. What is it?
Right, the Typhoon is effectively, in essence, there's a shortage of US land-based medium-range missile interceptor capability or missile capability that can target other targets. That's been seen as a big gap. Now, when it comes to that part of the world, Japan, obviously Taiwan is the huge friction point at the moment. So there's been a gap that has been identified by the US. So what they've done is they've effectively taken 2 missiles, the Tomahawk land attack missile, which is a cruise missile with about 1,000 miles range, and they've taken what's called the SM-6 interceptor. Now, they are traditionally naval-based launch capabilities, which the US have had for a while. But what they've done is they've evolved that, and they've developed a land-based US Army system called the Typhoon, and that basically is what has been deployed by the US to Japan and created a little bit of controversy.
So how does it work?
Okay, so let's take a look. I think we've got a slide here. What you'll see here on this graphic is that's not the missile, that's the launch system and the battery operated command. So the 4 trucks in the back of that shot and the vertical systems, they're vertical launch systems. You can put a Tomahawk land attack missile on that, which can attack something to about 1,000 miles, or you can put an SM-6 interceptor in it, which goes at about Mach 3, so it's not hypersonic technically, but it can intercept ballistic missiles. And then that big truck in the front is the battery operated command.
And why Japan? Why would they put something like this in Japan? What sort of targets are they looking at?
Well, I think if we go slide, we look at a map of the area, we can actually see the range rings on the SM-6 and the Tomahawk land attack missile. Now,
this is being deployed to Iwakuni. Iwakuni is right next door to Hiroshima. So that's where the dot is on the screen, if you like. The 370-kilometer range ring, that's the SM6 interceptor. It's got hypersonic up there, but I would kind of disagree with that label at the moment, just because it's only Mach 3. And then the 1,600-kilometer ring, that effectively is the range of any Tomahawk land attack missile that can be launched from that. And then if you look at the geography, you can see North Korea up to the northwest of Iwakuni, and then obviously you've got a significant amount of coastline out to the west, which is China. So obviously creating a little bit of controversy with the Russians and the Chinese.
But presumably it has sparked a reaction. What's been the deployment from China and from the deployment from China and from Russia in response?
Yeah, diplomatically from China, there's been a lot of pushback. What we'll probably see there is a escalation of military capability that will then be pushed in by China. But Russia's already done that. They've deployed what's called the Bastion K-300 missile system. If you look at Japan, where it says range of US missiles in Japan, just under the far right A, if you go down, that's some Russian islands called Kuril. And what the Russians have done is they've put a K-300 missile system. Now, it can't actually reach the Japanese mainland, but it could obviously intercept naval targets or potential Japanese or naval capability that are coming anywhere close.
Let's bring in Frank, because as you say, you just read a superb piece online for our in-depth series looking at this very issue. And what I take away from it, Frank, when I read your piece, was that there is this global contest ongoing right now, and it's really heating up.
Yeah, China is well ahead of the rest of the pack on this one, closely followed by Russia, leaving the West way behind. Because what's happened, Christian, is that for the majority of this century, the 21st century, the West, primarily the US and the UK, were very much preoccupied with fighting insurgency wars in Iraq, and Afghanistan, and counterterrorism. China didn't have to worry about that. They were busy developing weapons and increasing their dominance over the South China Sea and threatening Taiwan.
Now, remember what I said? I said this going all the way back to 2020 when I was talking to Miss Taiwan during the crisis. And I said that the pinch point, the end result, where this is all going, everything, the bioweapon warfare, the bioshield, the economic instability, new weapon development, it's all going to it's all going to a point where there's going to be that flashpoint is Taiwan. We're going to have a war in the Pacific, and it's going to be not a proxy war like what's going on in Ukraine. It's going to be existential. If the United States wins, we'll have the hegemonic power in the Pacific. If we lose, we will lose the hegemonic power in the Pacific, and it will cost us so much money that our economy will be destroyed. That's where this is all going. Now, remember what I said, that there's a warfare that's going on in Europe because the central banks in Europe can't do quantitative tightening. So this is going to be a two-front war. This is going to be a world war that's approaching. We are tiptoeing into World War III. Now, I'm not sure if the United States will win or lose. I'm more confident that we'll win than lose. But it's possible that we do lose. And if we do lose, then what happens is that we've spent a lot of money, most likely have used nukes, and have lost economic and military prowess. Because if we lose, we probably will lose most of our fleet, naval fleet, in the process. So there's something that is boiling up that people need to pay attention to. Is this going to happen next year? No. But it may happen in 2027. May happen in 2028. President Xi said that he promised not to go into Taiwan under Trump's administration. Well, what happens after Trump's administration? Do you really think that the soy boys out there and Gen this newer generation, the millennials, or Gen Z, or even Alpha, will be able to fight a war against the Chinese? And let's say the Chinese win, and we lose our economic prowess and our military prowess in the United States. Then you'll have other countries that will want to adopt a one-party system like the CCP. And if you don't think I'm right about that assumption, then take a look at what almost happened in the United States and all across Europe with Marxism and socialism. So you have a big section of the young that are liberal, that aren't athletic, that aren't healthy, that have diabetes, they have problems with their heart now because of the crisis that we went into, even if they were athletic. And we're in a big problem here. This is part of the whole idea of bioweapons, is to weaken the young for a future war and that they can't fight. If you have a child that is healthy, what you need to do is make sure that they have the best education that they can have, and to be truly a thinker, but also make sure that you give them athletics, because it's through athletics that is going to give them the increased probability of surviving what is coming. A bunch of people sitting in a chair playing video games aren't violent enough for a war. They don't have the stamina or the muscular structure. We're going to war. It's happening. All you got to do is just listen very closely. BBC is state-run TV in UK. If they are priming their audience in the UK, we're in danger. We need to start getting a war footing. And you start priming that population for 24 months. And then boom, there's a flash pan. There's some sort of flash pan moment. And it's tied to central banking. But the truthers out there will go, oh, don't have a war in the Pacific. It's only about bankers, blah, blah, blah. It's a new world order, blah, 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 blah. But the reality of the situation is this. If the United States loses its hegemonic power in the Pacific, and China rises above the United States as a superpower, do you really think that our constitutional freedoms will be protected? Do you think other countries will follow the lead of the United States in terms of governance? Or do you think that they'll follow the lead of the CCP? The CCP in China must be, not maybe, must be destroyed. Absolutely, completely destroyed. It's an existential threat to the United States.
Very heavily in hypersonic weapons. They've been doing it for the last 20 years. In 2019, they unveiled at a military parade in Beijing their thing called the Dongfeng 17, which is a a missile that goes right up into the stratosphere and then launches a hypersonic warhead or several. And they've built on that capability. So they are a long way ahead. Russia has a number of different weapons like Avangard. Some of the claims by President Putin have been a little bit outlandish, claiming, for example, that the Kimmel dagger hypersonic missile is unstoppable. It isn't. It's been shot down several times over Ukraine. But China has got both hypersonic glide and hypersonic cruise missiles, which are going to make it very hard if the US decides it's going to defend Taiwan with its navy, should China decide to take Taiwan. I guess Mikey here, just a very quick follow-on. The US has Dark Eagle, that's their long-range hypersonic weapon system that is in trial at the moment. That's predicted to be fielded at the end of 2025. Where is the UK on this evolution of hypersonic capability? Well, in blunt, way behind, but they are not doing nothing. So in April this year, the Ministry of Defence in the UK announced that they had successfully completed 233 tests at the NASA Langley Laboratory in Virginia, together with the US government and together with UK industry. And it's a thing called the Defence Science and Technology Laboratories. They've been carrying out propulsion tests. But okay, great. John Healey, the UK Defence Minister, called it a landmark moment, a historic moment. But we are years behind. It'll be a long time before this stuff becomes operational.
Simone, thank you. I know you've been at some of the
At Capital Group, we design our active ETFs to weather the ups and downs of the market, so they can be rooted at the core of the portfolio. They're meticulously crafted to endure. Capital Group, actively different, active ETFs.
Check this out.
They have over 1 million quality parts?
That are guaranteed to fit. Now that's my speed.
some of the arms fairs.
So met a fascinating guy called Kevin Moore in the coffee room in the coffee lounge at the SEI. His previous experience is retired Lieutenant Colonel, US Army, but an expert in missile and missile defense. Okay, well, let's bring him in. Kevin, hi.
Good morning. How are you?
We're very well. We're very well. Maybe you could bring us up to speed with this capability gap that Mikey has been talking about.
Frank touched on it. Why are we behind? We were fighting other wars, and a lot of the S&T dollars that had been given to kind of, years ago, the U.S. and the West were developing, hypersonic capabilities. You look at the space shuttle, there's nothing new there. It's just, we were focused on a different mission set. So fast forward, and as China and Russia have, this newer capability, we're playing a little catch up. And so one thing I wanted to highlight though on kind of the defense, right, is the US and the West, we focus on this layered capability, right? So that goes down from, if you think counter UAS and you have Iron Dome, for example, or you have IFPC on the US side, all the way up from a PAC-3 missile to THAAD. You kind of have this layered defense based on what threats coming in. And when you talk about the new hypersonic, you talk about the speed, number one, being a concern, because, going super, super fast. And then you talk about the maneuverability, and that's the one I think is the hardest to discern from previous ICBMs that have that ballistic track. And there's two things that go along with that. One of them is how do you detect and sense this, number one, because of the speed and the angle of entry and the glide body itself. And then the second is, what means do we have to counter that? And I would actually dive in, take that apart a little bit and say, what are the kinetic means? And then what are the non-kinetic means? And so traditionally, from a ballistic missile defense perspective, we look at left of launch, meaning what are our capabilities to take this out before it even launches? The second is kind of that boost phase, where how do we take it out before it launches exothermic and separates, which with the warhead, etc. And then where do we intercept it? And so right now, I think.
Sorry, Kevin, just in the interest of time, I think the big question I've got is that everything you're talking about suggests a counter space capability. Is that what the Americans are working on with their 1 trillion 2026 defense budget?
Yeah, so I think there's initiatives that have come out through the Missile Defense Agency talking about a space-based interceptor. And really the premise behind that is the engagement timeline for the operator to detect, track, and then engage has diminished tremendously in time. And it's really, it's almost like you're going to need an autonomous system to make the decision, which I don't think anybody is ready for that yet. And so one of the concerns and one of the thoughts is, well, if you have a space-based interceptor, you decrease that engagement time and you give it a little bit more legs to go after a target when it's at mid-course.
Kevin, well, I'll have to leave you there. Thank you very much for that. Mikey and Frank, thank you also for your thoughts. If you want to read about this issue, you can go to Frank's piece online. It's an in-depth article, lots of detail in there. And of course, if you missed any part of this security brief, you can find it on YouTube, on the BBC YouTube website. We'll see you next week.
The Acrobat Studio is on there. What can PDF spaces with AI do? If you're marketing leads that you want to spot an AI assistant, go to Javon. I break down report. There are key insights in the rise of bits. I say generate, do it all in one. Do that, doing that, do that, done.
We've been swallowing their story for years. Enough. New Recharge by Vimergy. The fatigue-fighting formula that saves you from quick fixes. Energy, we can save ourselves.
All right. All right, so I have a question here. Someone's asking about NAD and taking patches versus, let's say, tablets or so. I have a supplement called NAD Plus. This supplement is very high quality. Everything I sell is very high quality, and it's what I take. Now, NAD Plus will boost up your NAD Plus levels and increase your energy, help to repair DNA damage in your cellular DNA and mitochondrial DNA. And NAD Plus helps to protect neurons. Now, the question that was asked in the chat was about patches versus tablets. I prefer tablets. Why? Because patches are stuck to your skin. Now, if you are doing this for an anti-aging protocol, all right, where you're doing this for years to improve your body and slow down the aging process, why the hell would you stick a patch on your skin constantly for years? You think that putting a patch on your skin constantly for years is going to be good for your dermal layer? Because you got the basal layer, you got the dermal and the epidermal layer, right? Well, you have blood and you have blood vessels and you have lymphatics that are in the area. You also have pores. You have lots of different things that are in the actual surface of the skin. Now, if you put something on the skin constant and there's some sort of irritation, maybe because of sweat or you're working out and you're rubbing against that patch, you may stimulate your immune system to actually create antibodies against the contents of the patch and create psoriasis or create some sort of eczema. Now, I'm not saying that happens all the time, but why would be someone taking NAD Plus just for a week? You'd be taking NAD Plus as a long-term part of a protocol because you're trying to boost up energy levels, repair your DNA, and to protect your neurons and to slow down the aging process. So it has to be used long-term. So if you put something on your skin constantly, and you're peeling it off, and putting another one on, and you're peeling it off and putting another one on, and maybe you're switching areas. But if you look at people that have patches on their arm or on their leg, and they constantly are putting them on, and they have these things for years, they're doing this for years, you'll notice that their skin, there's something wrong at the underlying layer of the patch. And if there's enough irritation and you break tolerance, you're going to create antibodies against the actual compounds of the patch. These antigens that are on the patch, the chemicals and the substances on the patch, your body can become build an immune system against it. And so when you put it on another area of your body, it activates your immune system and it actually attacks the patch, and you start having these irritations with the skin, and you start having this type of plaque buildup on the skin, or an eczema or a psoriasis. Some level, there's different levels of psoriasis. So I don't believe in bad. Patches are bad. If it's long term, it's bad. I mean, just think about, then people go, well, there's more bioavailability because it's on the skin and it'll soak into the bloodstream. And so just take a higher dose of NAD+. I mean, with that logic, everything should be a patch then. Well, why isn't everything a patch? Because it's not healthy for you. Don't do patches. I'm telling you, don't do patches. Just because it's more bioavailable doesn't mean that that long term. Now, if someone needs a patch because of some sort of issue that's short term, then it's not that big of a deal. But you look at people that either for long term use, either trying to quit smoking, or long term use because of, let's say they're trying to get pregnant, and they have patches for that. You look at the area of the skin of individuals that have patches, and they have them there chronically, they have them there regularly, it causes problems with the skin. Now, you pick which one you want to do, but taking a tablet form is a better way to do it. All right, please go to my store. And people would say, well, you just sell the tablets. Yeah, that's true. But the thing is that just think about the logic of using a patch all the time. Now, if it's short term, it's not a big deal. But if it's long term, and you should be taking NAD+ long term, like for decades. All right. If you're going to use a patch for decades, you really think that your skin is going to be better off with the patch? Especially if it can cause an autoimmune issue and cause psoriasis? I don't think so. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the NAD+ and build up those energy levels, slow down the aging process, repair the DNA damage, and protect the neurons. Protecting the neurons is super important. Okay. All right. Let's listen into Fox Business.
Zero helps me take my business anywhere I want.
Tell me, Dad.
Okay, yeah.
Did you come this far just to come this far?
All of this, again, is affecting the markets. There's also this story that's moving in the markets today. Look at Boeing right now. Stock is flying at the top of the Dow. Just a second ago, it was number one. Now it's number two. Boeing is up more than $4. That's almost 2%. President Donald Trump announcing that the airplane maker just struck a deal with Uzbekistan to deliver 14 787-9 planes in a deal worth over $8 billion. And this is the jet maker's single largest order to date. Certainly the company is celebrating that one. They need it. Dell Transport's also getting a boost from this Boeing deal. As you can see right now, Dell Transport's $15,698 and change. Another story we're following, this goes back to the Fed and those comments from Jake, how gold is climbing. We hit an all-time high today, 3,795 and change, on track for its highest close in history. Traders are betting on the Fed to further cut interest rates after Powell's speech today. Are we going to get another 2 cuts? That seems to be the thinking right now for the street anyway. Now, bulls are taking a break. As we mentioned, markets are not looking too great right now, but it does look like the majors are going to hit any fresh records, at least for now. But hey, it's how they close the next 55 minutes. We'll see how we go. What should you be buying on a down day? Sometimes there is opportunity on days like today. Let's get to our floor show. Joining me now is Market Rebellion co-founder John Najarian. And John, one of the things I was looking at in your notes is the energy sector. And you mentioned NATO in this robust response. You're going to want to hear this then. We just got some comments on Truth Social from President Trump. He just finished up that bilateral meeting with President Zelensky. And he basically said Ukraine can win back all territory lost to Russia. We're going to continue, the U.S., to supply weapons to NATO for NATO to do what they want with them. That was just moments ago from President Trump.
Yeah, well, the issue here is that Russia's been very close to a number of NATO countries, most particularly Poland right now, when they're doing some of their bombing. And or when they have their jets flying into NATO airspace. So that's been one of the things, Cheryl, that has caused the prices to lift in the energy space, because obviously an even larger conflict with Russia and perhaps even members of NATO would mean crude oil prices would likely go significantly higher. So we saw Halliburton get an immediate reaction from that because their oil field services and so forth, so that you'd have to develop a lot more energy here, for instance. But I'd also watch Schlumberger, SLB, along with that Halliburton HAO, if we continue to hear rhetoric and see this sort of thing playing out in Eurasia or Europe in general.
You also, one of your other picks, and this is a news-making stock, and this is Disney. Obviously, we're on the heels of the news breaking yesterday that Jimmy Kimmel is going to go back live on the air tonight. We'll see what he has to say, whether or not he apologizes. There's some reporting out there that he doesn't plan to. We'll see what his monologue to say. But, this has been a hit for Disney. And his contract is up in May of next year. There's a lot of question marks about late night television, that drag on the company. And then you've also got the issue of the consumer with Disney, whether it's the parks or whether it's the streaming business. Do you still like Disney as a pick? And would you buy it at these levels? It's at 112 right now.
It would not. I think it goes lower still. And I don't think it tests back down into the 80s where it came from on this most recent bounce. But it is down some $8 billion since Mr. Kimmel made that lie that he told about the shooter being MAGA and so forth. Basically, Disney pulled him off the air because Sinclair and Nexstar said they weren't going to carry it. Well, they've gone back to saying we're still not going to carry it. And that takes another 30% of the available affiliates off the table for Disney and for the Jimmy Kimmel Show. So this is not something that's going to end well, at least unless we get some sort of apology that seems sincere. People are going to turn off that show, and it doesn't matter what FCC Chair Barr does. It's more what his employer does. And I don't think they can take too much more pain. Just like Colbert, this show is losing money. And if you've lost almost 5% since September 16th, I think it's really difficult to justify an $8.5 or $9 billion hit to your market cap for one show.
And that's hence why I think that contract negotiation that's going to be obviously underway in the spring and then at the end of that season, May of 2026, that's obviously another financial piece of this puzzle. Whether or not they even keep the show, I think that's a great point. One of the things we've been seeing for September is obviously it's the AI trade, which has continued. But I'm curious if you think that trade might be kind of topping out right now. We've got all the data center news. There's other ancillary plays when it comes to AI, whether it's the energy play to your point earlier about overseas. You've also got the domestic energy story with the AI data centers. Nuclear could be an option here. Where do you think we go with those stocks, though? Do you think that they're still going to be hot?
We do. And you hit on nuclear, so you're exactly right, Cheryl. I mean, when you look at nanonuclear, symbol NNE, or SMR, or ACLO. ACLO is up from $94 a share. This is a small modular reactor, an SMR play. So what do? Think of basically if you put a nuclear sub, shrunk it down and put it on the back of a semi. These are nukes that basically can fit on the back of a semi, and they can provide enough power for small cities or for data centers and so forth. And believe me, the orders from the data centers are huge for all of those stocks that I just named. So you're exactly on the right track here. We're going to see nuclear be a substantial winner because of this. And that stock, by the way, traded from 94 end of August to now, I think today I saw it at 142. That's not a lot of days for it to get that much market cap, but that's what we're seeing in the space.
We're hearing that from the administration in particular about nuclear. And look, the French have been, monopolizing the nuclear power. I mean, they really kind of led the world, and they've done it safely and securely and cleanly. There's so many answers in nuclear. I've brought that up so many times. John, it's always great to speak with you. Thanks so much for joining me. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Cheryl. Always good to be with you.
If your pet goes from weird to weirder, drooly to droolier,
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges and the drops. You're going to need these for the fall and the winter. Trust me. Once you have that throat irritation, take them right away to mitigate the problem. All right? Very important. Have you noticed that people age faster when they're chronically sick? Have you noticed that? All right. The reason why is it produces a lot of inflammation. It takes a long time to heal the tissue after an infection, and you're creating a lot of free radicals and all this stuff, right? Ages you. Does damage to the cells, does damage to the mitochondria, your energy levels go down. But if you see someone that gets sick all the time, they're literally aging faster. They're 100% confidence that they are aging faster. Now, a lot of people don't realize this. Even if you have something relatively benign, common cold or whatever, all right, and it lasts for 5 days or 7 days, it will take 2 to 3 weeks to heal the tissue. Even though you feel better, it takes 2 to 3 weeks for your body to get back to pre-infection levels. So if you're sick 2 or 3 times a year, that's about 9 weeks out of the year that you're either sick or remodeling your tissue. You think that you're slowing down the aging process if you're constantly sick? Absolutely not. And then you add in, if it's more problematic, let's say that it becomes a much worse respiratory infection, whatever. Then it takes even longer to remodel. The point here is that if you mitigate these sorts of things right away, you don't have to remodel as much. And therefore, it doesn't take your energy to spend for remodeling and fighting. So it's really important to mitigate it right away. You start having the throat irritation right away, especially this fall and this winter season, you need to take the lozenges and the drops right away. The moment you start feeling that. So that means that you have to have these lozenges and drops around you at work or at home or at school or wherever you are. Have a few bags of these lozenges and drops available right away. Get the elderberry zinc. The lozenges are larger than the drops. You get 21 in each bag. Get a few bags for your household. It's super important. But I also have it in the drops in cherry, in blueberry, and in honey and lemon. You have 100 small drops in each bag. Get a few bags for your household. And if you start having a throat irritation, mitigate it right away. Trust me. Trust me. I kind of know the subject matter really well. All right. I'm just saying. Now, if you don't want to pay attention, don't. That's up to you. All right. Let's see here. Let's listen into CNN what exactly happened at the ICE facility with the shooting today.
Gunman opened fire at an ICE facility in Dallas. At least one person is dead, according to police, and we are live with the very latest. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Pamela Brown. Wolf Blitzer has the morning off, and you're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN breaking news.
And we begin with the breaking news. A gunman opens fire at an ICE facility in Dallas, killing at least one person and wounding two others. Law enforcement officials tell CNN that at least two detainees were shot. According to the deputy director of ICE, no ICE officers were injured and the shooter is deceased. We are told ICE employees, civilians, and immigrant detainees are among those at that facility. We are waiting a news conference any moment, and of course, we'll bring that to you as soon as it starts. So let's go straight to today's Priscilla Alvarez. Priscilla, what is the latest?
Well, Pamela, we're still gathering details as to what exactly unfolded here, but we are learning more from the Dallas police, which moments ago said what transpired this morning in a post on X. Let me read some of that to you. They said that they responded at about 6:40 a.m. to an assist officer call at this facility. They went on to say that the preliminary investigation determined that a suspect opened fire at a government building from an adjacent building, and went on to say that two people were transported to the hospital with gunshot wounds, as you mentioned, one of whom died at the scene, and the suspect is deceased. Now, the acting ICE director, Todd Lyons, on our air this morning, saying that the suspect was dead from a self-inflicted wound. And what my sources tell me is that at least two detainees were shot when this happened. Now, just to give you a little bit of context as to what the facility is, this Dallas ICE facility is generally a place used to process detainees. So they may be arrested by ICE, taken to this facility to be processed, where there are about 3 or 4 holding cells. So generally there are a few dozen people at the facility before they are then transferred to a detention center. Now, we still do not know the motive of this shooter. We'll hopefully learn more about that in the forthcoming presser. What we do know from Homeland Security officials is that no ICE agents were shot or hurt during this incident. That's what they have said so far. But they are also highlighting that there have been increased assaults, attacks, and threats on ICE personnel. In fact, this particular facility was the target of a bomb threat in late August. So the Department of Homeland Security similarly saying that they do not have yet a motive for this shooter, but they are tying this as well to what they have seen across the country, which is this increase in attacks toward ICE personnel. Take a listen to what the acting ICE director had to say about that this morning.
I've never seen threats on law enforcement, specifically ICE, increase the way it is. You know, we're up over 1,000% assaults on officers right now. And really just a lot of the talk that's out there, a lot of the rhetoric is just the violence directed towards law enforcement officers just trying to do their job. And we just keep seeing an increase.
Now, again, I want to stress the motive here is unknown. We're still trying to gather details on that. But what we do know is that at least 2 of those who were shot were detainees. There have been injuries, at least 1 person killed. The shooter died from a self-inflicted wound. And according to the Department of Homeland Security, no ICE agents were shot or hurt in this incident. We'll hopefully learn a lot more in the press conference in the minutes to come. Pamela.
All right, I want to bring in Charles Ramsey for more on this. I know, Charles, we are expecting to hear from police there in Dallas. There's still a lot of questions. We don't know a motive. How are you looking at this? What questions do you have?
Well, certainly hopefully we'll get a lot more information as the press conference unfolds. But right now, behind the scenes, what's going on? The shooter is dead. So they either already identified him or they're in the process of identifying with the elite search warrants, a look at his social media footprint, did he leave anything behind, trying to determine motive. We know we have 1 dead, 2 detainees shot. Was the intent to shoot detainees or was it to shoot ICE agents? I mean, we just don't know, whether or not the deceased individual was a detainee as well. So there are an awful lot of unanswered questions. I'm sure the FBI will be involved in this since it happened at a federal facility along with the Dallas PD. So hopefully we begin to get a picture of what actually took place once the press conference is completed.
And we should note that there's been an uptick in attacks on ICE facilities, ICE officials. In fact, there has been over 800% spike when compared to the previous year in terms of assaults on officers. So you have that, plus the fact that this same facility in Dallas had been targeted before with a bomb threat. Are you surprised a gunman was able to get there and get through whatever security there is and carry this out?
Well, from what we know so far, this was apparently a sniper. I don't know how far away the sniper was from the facility itself. The security they had in place there, and probably at ICE facilities and federal facilities for that matter, around the country, are basically protecting the building itself, in and around the building, which doesn't take into account a sniper. We don't know how far this person was, the kind of weapon it was used, obviously probably a rifle of some sort, in order to make a shot. But there are a lot of unanswered questions. But yes, I'm sure that security's been increased. I mean, this is very controversial what ICE is doing right now, but these officers are only doing their jobs, and they're doing it in the direction of the president. So, this is something that's controversial and certainly, unfortunately, not surprising in the current environment we find ourselves in today. But it's unfortunate someone lost their life, whoever that individual is.
And the Vice President, J.D. Vance, just tweeted out, quote, "The obsessive attack on law enforcement, particularly ICE, must stop. I'm praying for everyone hurt in this attack and for their families." Again, at this early stage in the investigation, officials are saying that ICE officials were not injured in this. We know that 2 were shot, 1 was killed, so we're waiting more details. But given this wet environment, what should happen moving forward in terms of protecting, as you said, these ICE agents who are just carrying out orders from the president?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a security.
I work 2 jobs, support a family, and drive 3 hours to school. Now funding cuts would keep me from graduating. Is that all you got?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a security assessment done at all federal facilities, but I would argue it goes beyond federal facilities. I mean, political violence in general is taking place in our country, and those high-profile individuals, elected officials, federal employees, and so forth, need to do a threat assessment to make sure that they're taking steps necessary in order to secure themselves. It won't be 100% foolproof, but at least review what you currently are doing to see whether or not there are additional steps, whether you need drones to check rooftops or whatever it might be. I don't know the answer, but I do know that you do need to assess where you are right now and what you may need to do in the future to do all you can to protect the people who work in these facilities.
The gunman is dead, according to officials. So how does that complicate this investigation in terms of identifying a motive?
Well, I mean, he probably left something behind. They've either already identified this individual, or they certainly can identify him through fingerprints and various other means. And they're going through social media posts. They're going through a vehicle, if you drove a vehicle there, all these kinds of things to try to uncover a motive. Sometimes you never do determine a motive. I think in this case, he probably will. He took his own life, probably left something behind. Some of these guys want, the world to know why they did what they did, even though it may not make a lot of sense to us. To them, it makes sense. And so I'd be surprised if eventually they don't uncover a motive in this particular case.
Right. And just to be clear, I'm not sure if we've identified whether the shooter is a male or female. So we're just waiting for more details, hopefully from police there in Dallas. And as we await for officials to come and answer questions, tell us a little bit more about what you would want to ask them if you were there at that press conference.
Well, one question we just talked about, and that is, do you have a motive? Who is the shooter? I mean, do you have an ID? Are you able to share that information? They may not be able to, because in the early stages of an investigation, even if you know who the shooter is, you want time to be able to not only see social media and conduct search warrants, but you want to be able to interview family, friends, all those kinds of things. And once that name is out there, it makes it even more difficult. What kind of weapon did this individual use? How far away was that person? Do you believe the target was actually detainees, or was he actually shooting at ICE agents? Were the detainees outdoors? Under what were the circumstances where they were exposed to sniper fire? I mean, these are all things that, you know, I kind of want to know at this stage in the investigation. Some of that information you'll be able to get, some of it you won't, because it is in the early stages.
But it's important to get those answers to protect and address vulnerabilities at these facilities, right? So Charles Ramsey, thank you so much. Marcelo Alvarez, thank you as well.
All right, we're gonna play the BBC about Kiev can win all of Ukraine back from Russia, according to President Trump. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin C and magnesium. This helps with your skin, your immune system, and brain function. Super important. And magnesium and zinc helps with the immune system and brain function. Stack them together as part of your anti-aging protocol and to boost up your immune system. But especially take this during the fall and the winter season. Really important. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Also take olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract helps with the immune system and your cardiovascular system. Brings down systemic inflammation and also helps to control your lipid profile. Really important. Please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. Improve your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Are you starting to notice a theme here? It's really important to boost up that immune system. I also have deodorants for males and females. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. These deodorants are made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Has no aluminum and no baking soda. All natural, and they're dual purpose. You use them as a daily deodorant, but it'll help to detoxify your body. When you're detoxifying your body regularly, you're helping your endocrine system and your immune system. Super important. So go to my store, get a few bars for your households for males and females, detoxify your body, and use it as a deodorant so you don't smell like a crazy liberal, and your immune system is better. And lastly, get the omega-3. Omega-3 will help with your cardiovascular health. What it does is it brings down systemic inflammation. By bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. Omega-3 helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. That's really important because less LDL means less plaque. And omega-3 helps to prevent red blood cells from sticking too much. So that reduces clot formation. And I'm really sure that more clot formation is going to be taking place in the fall and the winter. So it's really important for you to start taking omega-3 like right now. And oh, by the way, stack with nattokinase to get synergistic benefits. But if you don't want to pay attention to me, don't. But people are going to have problems in the fall and the winter that are the normal seasonal problems in terms of symptoms. But overclotting, and oh, by the way, there's a shock, an aftershock after, where it's early onset of dementia. It's immune suppression. It's not just respiratory. But if you don't want to pay attention, don't pay attention. But be prepared. Be prepared.
There's a way to save yourself. Introducing fast absorbing vitamin drops by Bimergy.
Grip, stability, precision. That's the essence of driving. Lawson.
Ukraine's President Zelensky says there's been a major shift in Donald Trump's position on Russia, with the US president saying Ukraine could take back all the territory it's lost.
After President Zelensky and Trump met on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, the Ukrainian president welcomed what he called a new closeness in Mr. Trump's position. Our State Department correspondent Tom Bateman reports from New York.
Volodymyr Zelensky came to New York and found President Trump, this time giving him and his country high praise and an unprecedented claim that it could eventually force Russia out. After their meeting, he posted, "I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form." Mr. Trump was asked about the recent incursions by Russian planes and drones into Estonia and Poland.
Do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do. After their talks, Mr. Zelensky suggested what the US president had said amounted to a significant shift.
Today, we had good conversation with President Trump, and I think he understands for today that we can't just swap territories. It's not fair. It's not real. So you think his position has changed? Yes, I think so. And God bless it. I really count on this.
It was 5 weeks ago that Donald Trump invited Mr. Putin to Alaska, a red carpet welcome onto US soil, and even applause for the leader that invaded Ukraine. But his attempts to woo the Russian president into any concessions failed. Moscow was still demanding more Ukrainian land than it already had as part of any truce.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling.
Mr. Trump has shifted positions on Ukraine and Russia multiple times now, from his Oval Office ambush of Mr. Zelensky, now lurching back into much clearer support for him. At the UN, Mr. Trump called Russia a paper tiger, saying it was not a real military power. Western diplomats have welcomed the remarks, but say they should still be taken with a pinch of salt. Even so, Ukraine's key European allies are running with what he said.
I welcome the proposal we saw a few hours ago from the President of the United States, recalling the gradual weakening of the Russian economy. I welcome what he said, the on-the-ground failures of Russia in more than 1,000 days. Russia's hardly gained 1% of Ukrainian territory. There's been so much loss, so many civilian victims, and few territorial gains.
President Zelensky is hailing what Mr. Trump has said here. He thinks that it shows the American president is coming right back into the camp of the Ukrainians. But the fact remains that Washington hasn't given any new funding for weapons for Ukraine since Mr. Trump came to power. And that would be the one thing that truly could change the course of the war, and something Mr. Trump is still unwilling to do. As Russia's attacks on Ukraine continue, Mr. Trump's apparent shifts are some comfort for Kyiv. But with few signs Vladimir Putin has been moved by Mr. Trump's previous flashes of irritation with him, Moscow seems unlikely to be fazed by this one. Tom Bateman, BBC News, New York.
The Kremlin had a diplomatic response to President Trump's change of tone. President Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov told Russia's RBK radio that the Kremlin leader values the US president's efforts to seek a resolution to the Ukraine conflict. Let's get some thoughts from Arseniy Yatsenyuk, who was Ukraine's prime minister during the 2014 Russian invasion of Crimea. He's now chair of the Kyiv Security Forum. Arseniy Yatsenyuk, thank you for being with us. I wonder how much of Mr. Zelensky's optimism you are sharing.
Well, first, I share the take of President Trump. We can win this war, but let me add his statement. He said that Ukraine can win this war with the support of the European Union. He probably missed and the United States. So this is a verbal U-turn, that's true, and that's not what Putin expected. But what Putin is closely watching right now, whether this kind of verbal U-turn would be underpinned by very strong actions. Words matter only in case if they are backed by bold and strong actions. So I expect that the US president is to decide to provide an additional security supplemental for Ukraine, to impose secondary sanctions on Russia and those who help Russia to circumvent sanctions. that the US will stay strong and stay united with the European Union. And look, NATO and the US are the real superpowers in the world, with the strongest military on earth, with the strongest economy on earth, with a huge population, with the cutting-edge technologies. And we are fighting against Russia, which is actually Russia is fighting against us, with the size of economy less than Texas, and we are deliberating over an issue whether we can win or we're gonna lose. We can win, and we have to win.
You talk about this shift, this verbal U-turn needing to be followed by concrete actions, because many will say Donald Trump tends to agree with the last person he spoke to. Couldn't there be
Zelensky, so I hope that
yeah, but people are saying that there could be another verbal U-turn that there could be another verbal U-turn the next time Donald Trump speaks to somebody pro-Russia, perhaps, and then turns in the direction of Putin again. How confident are you that this is a real significant shift?
I am confident that it is in the United States national security interests to help Ukraine to win in this war. I am confident that Trump doesn't want to be humiliated by Putin, because Putin already played Trump in Anchorage. Putin already made zero concessions, but he got everything that he wanted. And I strongly believe that Trump has realized that this kind of tapping along with Trump plays against the Trump. The US is facing midterm elections. And look, the majority of Americans still support Ukraine, both Dems and Republicans. So to put it in a nutshell, it is in the national security interest of the United States to help Ukraine, and it's in political interest of the President Trump to help Ukraine. So, and I believe that he's going to follow this path.
So you think there has been a realization by President Trump that he has been played by President Putin, but why, in that case, have we not seen the sort of actions that you say you want yet?
That's what we expect to see, because after this kind of very strong statement, the world is closely to watch what kind of actions President Trump is to undertake. If there will be no actions, this would severely depreciate the words of President Trump. And this would have a negative and disastrous consequences for his reputation and for the reputation of the United States. And that's not the aim of President Trump. So I hope that he wants to get the Nobel Prize, not the Nobel Prize that have been gotten by Kissinger for Vietnam, a different type of Nobel Prize where Ukraine get durable, fair, and just peace.
Arseniy Yatsenyuk, former Prime Minister of Ukraine and chair of the Kyiv.
Welcome back. The House Oversight Committee investigating American billionaire Neville Roy Singham for potentially funding extremist groups, such as groups linked to the CCP, which promote division and unrest in America, including the June riots in Los Angeles. Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer and Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna wrote a letter to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to request a probe into Singham's funding activities and possible failure to register under the Foreign Agent Registration. They write this: "It is imperative that we expeditiously halt the continued flow of funds and material support for malign activities conducted at the behest of the CCP." Here now is the woman herself, Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, a member of the House Oversight and Foreign Affairs Committees. Congresswoman, it was wonderful to see you the other day at the Charlie Kirk Memorial. Thanks very much for being with us this morning.
Very happy to be back, Maria.
So I want to ask you about this letter that you wrote to Secretary Bessent. Tell us specifically what Neville Roy Singham is doing in your view.
Yeah, so he actually has been the #1 funder of these violent riots. Not even just that, but a lot of the political division and discord that you're seeing in this country goes back to Singham. He obviously is a massive ally of the Communist Chinese Party and has actually made his billions directly working with them, only to in turn funnel those efforts into organizations like the Party of Socialism and Liberation. Maria, though, this doesn't just go back to those riots that we saw that were protesting ICE back in January of this year. This actually is a lot more nefarious. He has over, I believe it's 12 different groups that he's funding,
one of which actually has ties to the Salt Lake City queer group that was responsible or being looked at for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And so what we're finding is these organizations specifically that are focusing on issues that are dividing us, whether it's based on race or class, don't necessarily even care about those topics at hand. They're just using it in an effort to sow discord. And as you're seeing with these violent riots, the money's going back to China. He's not a registered foreign agent, and so he needs to be investigated. I've also forwarded it to the Department of Justice as well.
Well, that's just incredible because for a long time I have felt that there is this Marxist thread raging through America and that it is coming from the CCP. Is it just to disrupt life in America? I mean, what is the point of funding and what specifically is he paying for?
Yeah, so it's not just to disrupt. In fact, Neville Singham is an open, self-declared Maoist. He absolutely does not like what this country stands for, and so what these groups are doing, everything from funding, the Democrat Socialists of America, going into funding counter-Israel efforts, counter-America efforts. But what they're attempting to do is, if they can sow enough discord here and back elected officials, especially that support these ideologies, that would essentially put the United States as number 2 in the global order. It is my opinion and belief that he is working on behalf of the Chinese government to essentially break America. And that's what, unfortunately, some of these groups are doing. You'll see that the left-wing media has largely just been focusing on the clickbait content, but not actually looking at who's funding it. And Singham is number 1. I'd say that he's probably number 1 big fish that we have in regards to who's responsible for a lot of the divide in this country. And it's going back all the way to the CCP. Now, what's interesting about Singham is he actually lives in China a majority of the year, did not respond to Congress's request to have him to come in. So we did ask Bessent to freeze assets, but also you're seeing that FARA violation. And what I will tell you is the Department of Justice has a very easy layup here. They could actually bring charges against him. At the time, Senator Rubio had actually written, when he was ahead of Senate Intelligence Committee, to Merrick Garland asking him to do this. Merrick Garland never acted, but we have all the evidence and ability to do so. So I'm encouraging both the Attorney General as well as our Treasury Secretary to act now.
So there are assets that he owns in America that could be frozen.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to talk with the Treasury Secretary this morning, so I will ask him and follow up on your letter about this.
Thank you.
I want to get your take on President Trump canceling his planned meetings with Democrats, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. The president said what they're asking for is unserious and ridiculous demands to prevent a government shutdown next week. Jeffries responded to the president yesterday. Here's what he said. What?
The Democrats are ready, willing, and able to sit down with anyone at any place at any time. It's clear that Donald Trump and House Republicans and Senate Republicans are running scared, which is why they refuse to even sit down and have a conversation to discuss the Republican government shutdown and the healthcare crisis that is going to cause people in the United States of America to die.
Well, I think there was enough drama in that. People will die, Congresswoman. The president left the door open for future negotiations, posted on Truth Social to the leaders of the Democrat Party. The ball is in your court. I look forward to meeting with you when you become realistic about the things that our country stands for. Do the right thing. Congressman, where do you think this is going? Will we, in fact, see a shutdown next week?
I don't want to bet against Trump. If it does end up happening, I think the Democrats would own that, and they have a lot that they're struggling with in regards to their messaging. So I don't know that we'll actually see a shutdown. But what I will tell you, Maria, is I heard Hakeem Jeffries on the floor literally say he would never support what the Republicans had put forward in regards to keeping government open. And so I think that President Trump made the correct decision because they want the clickbait. They want to be able to fundraise off of saying that they're resisting the president, but they're not actually serious about negotiations. And so I'm definitely going to leave President Trump to do what he does best and broker that deal. But it's ridiculous that they want to keep even COVID level spending in this. It shouldn't happen. We can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, look, this stare down is going to continue until Tuesday, I guess, when government runs out of money. And, let's talk about the policy fight because they're talking about the expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies, 22 million Americans is $30 billion a year. While the political fight is over the future of the Democrat Party because they've got their own infighting there. But your colleague, Clyde, Conklin, joined me the other day and really told us exactly what the Democrats want here. Here's what he said, what? Andrew Clyde.
I think what he's talking.
With ProCare, you can make it easy for parents to register and maximize your center's enrollment with fast and responsive automation. Make a great first impression every time with ProCare.
I think what he's talking about are the COVID era subsidies for Obamacare. Not one Republican has ever voted for it. It's a problem. We're not in COVID anymore. So I think this is an issue of what's not in the bill. This is a clean funding or spending freeze rather for the next 2 months so that we can get the appropriations process completed.
So do you expect to get the appropriations process completed? And, you know, I always say, I've been saying, I don't know how it's possible that you could say you want to go back to pre-COVID spending and then all of a sudden say that you want all of these subsidies, Obamacare subsidies in this, you know, in the funding so that government doesn't shut down.
Yeah, we can't, frankly, Maria, we can't afford to continue the path of reckless spending. And a lot of what these people, just in general, Washington, is they're uncomfortable with going back to pre-pandemic. Well, guess what? We're not in a pandemic anymore. Representative Clyde was correct, though. This is a clean CR, but the appropriators and the cardinals who are head of those different areas need to put something on the floor. I'm not really a fan of CRs, and I'm not necessarily a fan of omnibuses. And so I hope that that's not where we're headed. But ultimately, I understand that this administration needs some wiggle room in an effort to bring forward their policies. And so that's why we've been so supportive. But look, what we're dealing right now is with half of the conference, right? The Democrat half that actually wants to be obstructionist rather than provide a plan. And so they're not actually serious about working with the president and negotiating. And so I hope that the president and the speaker stand firm in their positions. And if there is a shutdown, then it's going to be on them.
Ashley Davis, good move that the president canceled the meetings?
Yes, absolutely. There is absolutely no way that they would have negotiated good faith. They asked for $1 trillion more.
Congressman, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Anna Paulina Luna joining us. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Your business is crushing it, but unless they've got the right help desk software.
Oh man, it's just won't stop.
We're gonna go to a video by the Hill about Rubio and Stephanopoulos. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help to allow for gene expression to build muscle. This is really important for males and females, 40 years of age or older. Do resistance training, take the Myotrol, drink it with filtered water. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. Super important. And it will help to improve the health of your mitochondria. So you have ATP to maintain and build that muscle. This stacks well with gladiator barley, and Myotrol can be used if you're an athlete, younger or older, so you can help with your strength training for your sport. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Oh.
Stephanopoulos and Secretary of State Marco Rubio got into a heated exchange this week after the anchor pressed Rubio on the impact of cuts made to USAID.
Here's what happened. A study earlier this year published in the Lancet Journal took a look at the funding cuts those made to USAID. The report warned that without the funds, 14 million people could die over the next 5 years, with kids under 5 making up as much as a third of those likely to die. Now, Stephanopoulos pressed the secretary on the idea that funding cuts have led to death and could lead to more, but Rubio pushed back on that idea. Take a listen.
No one has died because of the aid cuts? Are all those aid organizations?
That's ridiculous. Well, first of all, then they died because England didn't give enough money, or Canada didn't give more, or China did. Let's blame the other countries that don't do any foreign aid.
Rubio continued blaming gangs and criminals for stealing aid.
Dollar's not going
The
to
reason why
feed
aid
someone
didn't get
this,
there,
and
no,
someone's
excuse me,
gonna die.
Paul, the reason why some of these places didn't get the aid is not because we cut the aid, it's because there's a war going on and the aid never got to the people. So in Sudan, for example, it's not just a humanitarian catastrophe, it's a war zone. Okay, the aid is stolen, the aid is impeded. In fact, they use aid as a tool against the people, and so blocking aid as a tool and an arm of war.
When pressed again, Rubio left a visibly frustrated Stephanopoulos with this.
The United States has saved more lives and continues to save more lives than any other country in the world. And we're going to continue to do it, but we're going to do it the right way and in a responsible way. We're not going to continue to pour billions of dollars out the door of American taxpayer funds for programs that don't work, and in some cases, were flat out corrupt.
I thought that was some great points from Marco Rubio. They keep citing this number. 800 bajillion people died yesterday because we reduced USAID funding to someplace. It's emotional blackmail, psychological manipulation. What was the plan? Was just that forever U.S. taxpayers need to send money to wherever it is, Africa, Asia, and there'll be no effort to create a sustainable infrastructure there to shift this from being an American taxpayer problem to something that the people there.
There's two problems with this whole issue. One, the Democrats and even the deep state is trying to maintain this USAID. One, because there's corruption and people are on the take and they're making money on it. And two, the deep state wants it as a tool for international policy. It's not that we're just giving it away. We don't give stuff away for free, all right? There's always a string attached to it, somehow, some way, all right? But the big issue here with the Democrats is that this was a means for them to fleece the American taxpayer. So no, we should shut it down. Let other countries deal with it.
Providing for. Again, I think the American people are very generous, extremely generous, and
we need to stop being
arguments
generous
for this or that program, targeted programs that are narrowly going to stave off some humanitarian crisis or disaster. But we can't just be, dropping money into war-torn areas where, to Rubio's point, the aid is seized by terrorists or by militias or whoever. And also, it just can't be. I mean, ask the American people: do you want indefinitely to be sending millions of dollars to a place that has this crisis, a food crisis or medicine crisis? What is the plan to have a hospital there, or to have distribution of medicine there, or food there? And why is no one else responsible for this? Just the U.S. I think those are all points that resonate with the American people.
I'm certainly open to reform within some of the places that Doe was looking into to cut, including USAID. I was always upset about the strategy and the lack of strategy in regards to it. So it was almost like pulling the rug from underneath us right now, or just asking people to get up, move back, and move the rug, right? There's a way to go about it. And what we did was cut aid abruptly, and so it caused a disaster worldwide. Not have a conversation with China, with the UK, and say, hey, can you guys put more money so we can balance the scales here, or free to, like you said, build a hospital, do these things. We just pulled the rug out, and then people died. Now, Stephanopoulos is not going off of just feelings. He actually is sorting numbers. So the Lancet report they're talking about said that yes, 14 million deaths may happen.
Believe me, because of the lack of testing with the inoculations, more people died in the United States than anyone that died because of pulling aid from USAID. And where's the liberals whining about that? Oh, my body have my choice, I thought. You know what? In America, we need to totally nullify liberals. Get them out of the politic. They have destroyed this country. We need to go into conservative. We need to be have more of a conservative mindset in this country. It's about individual. It's about the individualism, not collectivism. But, a liberal wants to tax everybody to death. Freebies, 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 and then tax more, tax freebies. I thought it was free. It's never free. You know what? Have these other countries pick up their own, deal with their own problems. The United States should stop paying for other people's problems. That includes Israel.
in the next 5 years, based off of current numbers and the trajectory would happen after we pulled the rug. But separately, a mathematician from Boston University looked at, no, a mathematician,
Here to save the earth.
but a mathematician looked at the numbers too and said they're exceeding 10,000 people dying already. Another professor researching this said 224,000 children could die even sooner than that. And so this is not about the fact that it's all the US's fault. For me, this is about the fact that it was handled so poorly that this many people did not need to die. And there was a way that we could have come together, like we're having a conversation in the UN about how to handle this as a world if we're trying.
Where was her concern during 2020 when there wasn't adequate testing of the inoculation? She didn't seem to care then.
Aid to other people or the superpowers of the world at the very least and figure out a way forward. I know it's not a responsibility, but we were already there. So why pull away things that are essential like disease surveillance or clean water or vaccination availability? We have the capacity to give. We can pull it back slowly and figure out how to work with other nations to continue having it there or have them be self-sufficient.
Yeah, we should be trying to make them self-sufficient, in my view.
Now, coming up, Jimmy Kimmel has officially made his return to late night TV. Stick around and see what he had to say.
Great. All right, let's listen to what Peter Ducey has to say about this pivot.
Zero
Trump.
helps me take my business anywhere I want.
President Trump pushing for peace at the United Nations meeting while also fully throwing his support behind Ukraine to fight off Russia's invasion.
What an explosive day yesterday. Senior White House correspondent Peter Ducey joins us with more. Peter, go ahead.
Good morning. President Trump now says maybe Russia is a paper tiger. And we've come a very, very long way from earlier in the term and his belief that it's both Putin and Zelensky who are being stubborn here.
Was a surprise for me. You're right. I was very positive signals from the side that Trump and America will be with us to the end of the war. Yes, as we will see. Right, we will see. But God bless, it will be so.
Here's the new President Trump position on Ukraine. After getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it is causing Russia, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. In the map on screen right now, you can see Russia has been nibbling at the edges of NATO territory in Europe, probing airspace with fighter jets, something President Trump says should result in returned fire.
Mr. President, do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do.
What progress do you think has been made on ending Russia's war against Ukraine since the last time you saw President Zelensky?
Well, the biggest progress is that the Russian economy is terrible right now. As you know, it's crashing. And that, frankly, Ukraine is doing a very good job of stopping this very large army.
A few weeks ago, when President Trump met with Putin in Alaska and then Zelensky here at the White House, he was talking about some kind of a land swap, ending the war by giving Russia some Ukrainian land and giving Ukraine some Russian land. That is not the case anymore. He thinks that Ukraine can take it all back, and he continues trying to be the middleman between Russia and Ukraine to end this war. He is not looking to make international coalitions like the United Nations, where Russia is still a member of the Permanent Security Council. Later on today, Secretary of State Rubio is going to meet with his counterpart, the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. Back to you.
Peter, what made the president change his mind essentially and say with the help of NATO and with the help of Europe, Ukraine, Kyiv can get back all of its borders? Was it he's just fed up with Putin?
Zelensky says that the specific thing that the president is the most mad about is that Putin has lied to him. He tells him one thing on the phone or in person, and then President Trump has ways to figure out what's going on the battlefield. He's got the entire Defense Department with eyes on what's going on. He knows if Putin is telling the truth or not. Putin has not been telling the truth to President Trump, and he's had it.
Thanks so much, Peter. A great show on Sunday. I mean, what a great interview. Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you. We're trying to do something a little bit different, kind of like a next gen Sunday show. And so I'll be there every other week. Jackie Heinrich will be there when I'm not. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, maybe shorts and short sleeves next week, just to be youthful.
Some hoodies.
Yeah, or hoodies. Belichick hoodies.
Yeah. You know what? Why not? Again, we're trying something new. I can just cut the sleeves off like a sport coat.
It's up to you. I want to tell you, it does cost a lot of money. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, so I was amazed by that Truth Social push. You know that I firmly believe that Ukraine has fought extraordinarily well, that the second biggest army in Europe. And when the president said, you know, it's not really our fight. Well, do you want the second biggest army in Europe enveloped by the third biggest army in Europe? And then they'll be looking at all our allies. When the president came out yesterday and said, if you see those planes in your area, should you shoot them down? The answer is yes. Well, Estonia experienced it, Romania experienced it, Poland experienced it, Belgium experienced it. And when the Polish official heard that, Trump's declaration, he says, Roger that. They're ready to do it because they got a bunch of drones hit. And I also think when he says, Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, that what should have been a real military power, a quick win. This does not distinguish Russia. In fact, they very much are making them look like a paper tiger. When the people of Moscow find out how bad it is, they're not going to be happy. Ukraine has great spirit. And they also have drone technology, and they're beginning to take a toll on the refineries of oil and gas in Russia. There are lines. Inflation is in double digits right now. And just to get gas in what is a gas station of a country is hard for the Russian people. That's what Ukraine is doing.
So the president tried to give Putin an opportunity. He wanted to be the peacemaker, but Putin thought he could embarrass the president, kept stringing him along. And so I think the president, I kept telling people, just be cool. Just be cool. Allow the president to try to get this. Putin will eventually overplay his hand, which he has, and the president is not leaving any ambiguity. As you notice, when they asked him, should they shoot him out of the sky, he didn't even flinch. He was like, yeah. His True Social post says, okay, Ukraine can win the war, but he's also saying the Europeans have to do more. And when he says do more, you can't fund the war. So if you think Putin is a threat, stop buying the oil. Stop buying the oil.
And they have. They said they've done that, and we're going to backfill with the natural gas and oil.
Smart.
Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, talked about Trump's frustration with Vladimir Putin.
President Trump has been very clear that he's been increasingly frustrated with both sides of this war for a very long time. But most recently, he's been incredibly frustrated with President Putin and Russia, who continue to talk nice, but then we wake up every morning and in the West Wing, we're receiving reports about how Russia bombed Ukraine and they continue to kill innocent civilians. And the president is making it very clear that Russia is in a very weak position, and he's absolutely right. The president has said that we are going to continue selling weapons to NATO, and NATO and Ukraine can choose how to use those weapons. But the way that this weapon arrangement has now taken place under President Trump is putting America first, because we are selling these weapons to Ukraine and to NATO, and NATO is backfilling those weapons to Ukraine. So the American taxpayer is benefiting from this. That's a change and a shift in position from the Biden administration.
He's going to get Democrat and Republican support for that. Keep in mind too, there's some there's some technology that Ukraine has that can help us. The drones, and Pete Hicks, the Secretary of War, came out and said we got a huge problem. We got to get more drones. And Ukraine said, "Excuse me, I could do that for you." Because a lot of the most effective people are in basements now making this stuff. So it's going to be interesting because Republicans and Democrats backing the president on an international initiative. He's going to find a lot of people happy about this. I'm Steve Goosey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch up.
Before we go to the next video, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor will get rid of that brain fog. It'll allow you to improve your neuroplasticity, so you're thinking faster, your memory will improve. This is very important so you can concentrate on tasks at home, at work, in school. It's a great supplement to help with your neurons. Please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor, super important. Also, another great neuroprotector is ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can get. Ubiquinol will soak up free radicals because it's an antioxidant. It'll help the health of your mitochondria so your energy levels will go up. And ubiquinol helps with neuroprotection. Stack it with the clarity factor. That's a great neurostack. Protect those neurons, super important. You're going to know within the next 5 years, people that are age 40 or older, because of the shock that we went through in 2020, about 30% of your network, social network, will probably get early onset of dementia. So you better start protecting your neurons. Heirloom barley brings down inflammation, detoxifies your body, and soaks up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. And when you detoxify your body and you're bringing down inflammation daily, what that will do is help with your immune system and your endocrine system, your joint health and your cerebral system. Super important. Your vascular system too. Please go to my store, detoxify your body regularly, and bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. This is a powder. Take it every day. It's an excellent supplement. And another great dual purpose supplement is collagen. Collagen will help with your skin, your hair, your nails, but also your joints, your cartilage, your musculature, and your bone density. Take it every day. It's a powder. It's a month's supply. You can stack it with the heirloom barley. That's a great stack. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
The Russians have got hold of now. Could the Ukrainians get that back in the way that President Trump suggests? Well, they almost certainly can't get Crimea back for the foreseeable future. They probably can't get all of it back. But maybe they could make inroads. Maybe they could push the Russians back. And if they began to push the Russians back towards their 2022 starting lines before February 2022, then I can guarantee you that President Putin will become a lot more keen on ceasefires if he started to lose some of the territory that he spent 3 years taking.
Watching Sky News Today coming up. A massive breakthrough in the treatment of Huntington's disease.
All right, let's listen to Fox News about Bill Hemmer. Not Hemmer, Bill Maher.
Every item finds a new
Bill Maher.
home in our neighborhood. Carrot, the local secondhand marketplace.
Come on.
Grip, stability, precision. That's the essence of driving. Lawful.
Real-time host Bill Maher spars with big-time Hollywood director Rob Reiner over conversations reaching across the political divide. Now, Reiner said there should be conditions met before the right and left in America talk to.
You're going to try to talk to somebody and you have a point of view, the other person has a point of view. Before you have the exchange, you have to agree on certain facts. No, you don't. You can't. Once you start down that. Well, no. But these are, you just have to talk to people. No, you talk to people. But if somebody says 2 + 2 is 4 and the other guy says, no, it's not. How do you begin the discussion? Because Rob, that's a slippery slope.
I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on this as you lead one of the most popular political podcasts in history. What is your take on this?
I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable with how much I'm agreeing with Bill Maher lately. But he's absolutely right. And, you know, the thing is, I worked on Capitol Hill for an awful long time, and you got to know Republicans and Democrats, all kinds of different people. I found that a sense of humor goes a long way of just bridging divides. If you sit down with like Rob Reiner and you're going to argue about like Medicaid policy, like that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, and you're probably going to end up in a fight in an awful lot of ways. But if you have shared experiences and you're talking about families and kids and you're laughing about what is the ridiculousness of politics, which by the way, you can't laugh about that. If you find anybody who can't laugh about today's politics, they have no sense of humor, and it doesn't matter whether they're Republican or Democrat, you probably shouldn't be hanging out with them, because it's hilarious. But yes, this is the conversation that needs to happen, but also just this collective community and neighborhood again, where people just sort of care about each other, regardless of what your views are or boxes you check. And it doesn't mean that you don't have your own convictions. It just means having a little humanity in the process.
Well said. I felt, Kaylee, that the two of them sort of had different expectations of what they were talking about. Because it seemed to me that Rob was sort of in there to have the two sides reach an agreement, whereas Bill Maher was just fostering the possibility of a conversation where you just listen to one another.
Yeah, I think that's a great and admirable thing. I mean, I had many such conversations in liberal academia, and they were powerful and meaningful, and it's great to have that. But not to make this a totally partisan segment, but I have to, because Rob Reiner said you have to agree on certain facts. Okay, there's some people he needs to excise from his circles. I'm not sure if he's friends with Jimmy Kimmel, but a fact is that we know this assassin had a left-wing motive. And Jimmy Kimmel went on and said the exact opposite. That was a lie. And then you have Kamala Harris, who has now said twice this was the closest election in history. If we want a common set of facts, start by looking with them, start by looking at your own party, because we can all agree with authorities there was a left-wing motive, but you have Jimmy Kimmel out there denying.
Right. So wouldn't a conversation then be the great place to say, actually, sir, here's the statistics. It wasn't close at all.
No, I think you brought up such a great point that one person is just trying to listen and talking about connecting, and the other person is trying to win an argument and nitpick at things. You know, we talk about how do we get to this point? I really think it starts really, really at a basic level. And this is why it's so important that people get back to the dinner table and have dinner. You know, families also don't agree on everything, and you learn how to have, you know, those kinds of conversations around the dinner table, because it's so much easier around a dinner table because you have so much in common and you love each other. And if you can take that feeling of, like you said, the humanity into another, I mean, that's where you learn. And then, you know, we have to do a better job at our universities. I'm so sick of diversity of everything except diversity of thought at our universities. And, you know, the big Fox News alert to me about Harvard was that we were giving money to them. We shouldn't give money to these universities, but we certainly shouldn't give money to universities that don't have some sort of parity in thought when it comes to, and philosophies and ideologies when it comes to our professors.
When I did this, I realized it was a scroll, and that's dates.
Yeah.
Here's what I was thinking about with you, that in the entertainment industry, you know, people consume and appreciate what you give them, and that people can certainly lead by example. Can't the entertainment industry set a new trend of civil discourse so that it's not just happening on campus led by Turning Point, but that it actually also is showcased in radio and podcasts and on television, where people see two hosts that sit down and have a civil, thoughtful conversation instead of sort of monetizing the argument and the soundbite.
Well, I think that would be lovely. Can we do that, Hollywood? I would love that. The problem that I find, though, is that I think a lot of their arguments they know would be negated immediately. Yeah. It's why they got so upset over Charlie, because he was able to completely dismantle their arguments with maybe a sentence or two. That's all it took. What I was thinking about as I was listening to these two men go back and forth, and I agree, the times that I'm agreeing with Bill Maher shocks me these days, but I kind of love it. He's coming to your side. He really is. It's not you. That's not that they're going to.
Yes, no, I agree with that.
But what I thought about was Dean Phillips. He ran for president as a Democrat, and there's this very interesting interview where he says, "You know what I did? I recently was across the street from a Trump rally. This was back like a year and a half ago." He says, "I was kind of curious, and I wasn't sure what I was going to get, but I walked over to that Trump rally, and you know what? I was welcomed. Everyone was happy to see me there. The atmosphere was positive and very inviting and welcoming. I think some of these people have been given such bad information. They're like, let's just cancel everybody on the other side of the aisle." This is from the left. If Rob Reiner would like, I can set up for him a trip to a Trump rally, and maybe we can totally change his mind on all the things. I think people are often shocked at how much more we have in common than we are, and then, you know, we have differences. And I think it's time we got back to the basis of who we are as a country, which is civil discourse and sitting down and talking to one another. It's pretty basic.
Bravo. All right.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get.
I have nothing in common with Marxists. I'm really sure about that. So the ultra liberal, No, conservatives need to push back. What is this? We need to sing Kumbaya and play patty cake with the ultra liberal? No, 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 no. Because these are the very people that actually want to destroy the Constitution, destroy democracy, destroy capitalism. That's their whole shtick. If you don't believe me, just listen to these people and where they're getting their information from. It's a Marxist takeover. It literally is Marxism. They almost like I'm sure what they do at home is just have a picture of Marx in their living room. And every morning they wake up and they light a candle for Karl Marx. Like it's their god or something. It's amazing. So you need to push back. You don't need to agree. You don't need to have a conversation. You just need to push back. I don't want their policies. Why? Because they're not functional. But yet we have a bunch of young people in New York that shouldn't even be here. They don't even deserve to be here. But they got a bunch of young people in New York that aren't making enough money, that can't live here. And what they do is they end up voting in a communist, aka Mamdani. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. Take this if you're 40 years of age or older. This will rev up your metabolism. It'll increase your energy levels. The first 4 B vitamins helps with the electron transport chain to increase that ATP. And B12 helps to protect neurons. So it's really important. Protecting your neurons, super important to slow down the aging process, but also to mitigate the aftershock from the 2020 crisis. Now, if you don't pay attention to me, it's your own goddamn fault. Now, going back to my diatribe on ultra liberals. Have you ever seen these kids that are coming into New York now, where they're literally, their mother and father are helping them move in? So to get out of college, they're not students. No, they start working at an entry level at a bank, or at maybe a consulting firm, or Ernst & Young, or wherever. All right, and they're literally they're helping their kid move in. Now, I'm from a generation that the parents don't help your kids move in. What the hell? What is this? You may have a friend that helps, but not your parents. That's almost like an embarrassment. I'm starting to notice that the younger generation, they're coddled. You got the helicopter mom making sure that that they're somewhat protected, and that they have a warm bottle and a blanket, because they're going into the real world now. I was with at an event where there was an elderly. Let me rephrase it. I was at an event where there was an older physician. All right. Near the end of her career, pediatrician. All right. And she was stating that her practice in the last few years, so the last 4 years or so, the kids, the pediatrics, typically pediatrics is at birth, right? All the way to about age 18. All right. And then you go to a general physician if you're an adult. That's the normal way. And it's been like that for decades in the United States. All right. Unless you're in some rural area and the pediatrician has to also service adults. This pediatrician in New York, near the tail end of her career, so she's older, is seeing many patients that are in their 20s and in the early 30s because of developmental issues. Some of it's psychological, some of it's actually endocrine. Now think about that for a sec. You have people in New York where their kids are seeing these adults, 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds are seeing a pediatrician because they're not up to snuff intellectually or endocrinology as an adult. Now that's partially because of the scheduling that's happening in pediatrics. I mean, the inoculation scheduling. That's due to the toxins in our water and in our food supply. The social media, that it's degrading and preventing individuals from actually becoming adults. The lack of participation in physical sports. These are all stressors that are actually preventing someone that is in their teens to actually move into real adulthood. And this is due to the ultra-liberal. The ultra-liberal thinks they know better. The ultra-liberal seems to be against RFK Jr. to make the scheduling more safe. The ultra-liberal is against cleaning up the food supply. The ultra-liberal is against. Did you see these videos on TikTok? Where people were starting to take a bunch of Tylenol just because they hate Trump? I mean, they're crazy. These people are fucking crazy. So are we supposed to just like sing Kumbaya and just, agree to disagree? No, you need to push back because their mentality, their policies are affecting people. They're affecting their endocrine system. They're affecting their emotional makeup. And conservatives need to push back and push back hard and prevent an ultra-liberal agenda from taking hold in the United States. That is literally Marxism. So this is not just political. This isn't just some political theory. You're seeing adults that aren't going through the normal milestones to reach adulthood. And that's a problem. Then you fast forward to maybe having a war with China. You think these 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds are ready to fight for America when they're still going to a pediatrician? It's amazing. And so psychologically, these helicopter moms, they created this mess. They created this mess. Oh, they paid attention to the scheduling. They thought everything is just going to be just perfect because that's what the CDC says. And meanwhile, they have a kid that's a literal retard. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right. Let's go to what's interesting is there's Huntington's disease has some successful treatment. I should do another video on that. I won't do it in this video. I'll do it in a different video. There's some important discovery with Huntington's disease. All right, let's go to GB News.
Terrible mayor who wants Sharia law. Today, Sadiq Khan has hit back, calling Trump racist, sexist, misogynistic, and of course, Islamophobic. With all the latest in the transatlantic tirade.
Yeah, but Khan, the mayor in London, you think London is a nice place now? It's a caliphate, just like Dearborn, Michigan, and Hamtramck, Michigan. You know, the big difference is London used to be a major financial center. But I wonder if they keep on having a caliphate in London, do you think it will maintain its prowess in the financial world? Probably not. Why? Because big finance needs to charge interest. That's a little hard in Sharia.
Council of Sanctuary after a huge backlash from locals. I'll be joined by the defiant Labour Council who say we don't need a bank to show that we're welcoming. That's it coming up in the next hour. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. One day, two stories that frame the utter insanity of where our asylum system has ended up. The first one, a video of foreign criminals being deported, violent criminals, sex offenders, being given £2,000 on credit cards, which they can simply plug into an ATM in Romania and take £2,000 of your money. The second one, £350,000 of your money going to one taxi company in the south and Wales, ferrying asylum seekers to GP appointments. Whereas last time you were able to get a GP appointment readily, up to 250 miles to get their knees checked. Have we totally and utterly lost the plot? Get in touch, gnews.com/your sales, the way to do so. But that's time for your headlines, and here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. The London mayor has branded Donald Trump racist, sexist and Islamophobic after the US president claimed the mayor wants London to go to Sharia law.
I look at London where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor. And it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law. But you're in a different country. You can't do that.
Sadiq Khan hit back, saying he has squatters' rights in Mr. Trump's head and is thankful for record numbers of American visitors. Labour dismissed the attempt, saying the president was misreading London and stressing it remains a global hub of law, culture and creativity. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage backed Trump's concerns, saying Sharia is an issue in London, but not an overwhelming one. Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the UN General Assembly today, opening his speech by saying only we can guarantee our own security. He said Vladimir Putin will keep driving the Ukraine war wider and deeper unless he is stopped. There are no real security guarantees except friends and weapons, he said, adding the world is living through the most destructive arms race in human history. He said that because international institutions are too weak, Russia's madness continues.
Estonia had to call a UN Security Council meeting for the first time in history because Russian fighter jets deliberately entered its airspace. Moldova is defending itself again from Russia's interference. We are helping Moldova, and Russia's trying to do to Moldova what Iran once did to Lebanon. And the global response, again, not enough.
Zelensky was speaking after US President Donald Trump shifted his position on the Russia-Ukraine war, saying for the first time that Ukraine could win all of its land back. Donald Trump called Russia a paper tiger in big economic trouble, but he stopped short of pledging more US funding or weapons for Ukraine. Russia has hit back, insisting Moscow is more bear than paper tiger. Elsewhere, a man in his 40s has been arrested in West Sussex over a cyber attack that's caused days of chaos at European airports, including Heathrow. The National Crime Agency says the attack targeted the firm Collins Aerospace, whose check-in and baggage software has been offline since Friday. Hundreds of flights have faced delays, with some airports forced to process passengers using pen and paper. Officials say ransomware was deployed as Collins scrambled to rebuild its system and urges airlines to prepare for at least another week of disruption. The suspect has been bailed as the investigation continues. The FBI says a shooting at a customs enforcement field office in Dallas is being investigated as an act of targeted violence. Police said 4 people have been shot and 1 has died. The attacker also died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Dallas FBI Special Agent Joseph Rothrock said it was a coordinated attack and just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence. He also said early evidence suggested the attack was anti-ICE in nature. A leaked Labour document shows Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff was told to describe £700,000 of undeclared donations as an admin error. The advice came from the party's lawyer in 2021, after the elections watchdog said the funds should have been reported. The Conservatives are demanding an investigation, accusing the Prime Minister of failing to declare support from Labour Together. The think tank, once led by Morgan McSweeney, was fined for more than 20 breaches. But Senior Minister Pat McFadden says the issue was dealt with years ago and insists Morgan McSweeney will remain in post.
I'm not surprised that political opponents are trying to attack Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff at Number 10. He's very effective. He was a big part of Labour's election victory last year. So I'm not surprised they're attacking him, but the Electoral Commission's job is to police all these things, and they said they looked into it some years ago.
Ofgem has confirmed energy suppliers must offer at least one tariff with lower standing charges from January, though the fixed costs won't be scrapped entirely. The regulator says the move will give households more choice on how they pay by shifting some of the daily fee into unit rates. It follows consumer pressure to reform the charges, which apply regardless of how much energy people use. Campaigners say the change is only a small step forward, as bills are still set to rise by 2% in October. Ofgem will now consult before final approval, aiming to roll out the new tariffs nationwide by the end of January. And doctors in London say Huntington's, one of the cruelest brain diseases, has been successfully treated for the first time. The disease runs through families, relentlessly kills brain cells, and resembles a combination of dementia, Parkinson's, and MND. A new gene therapy slowed the condition by 75%, giving patients decades more good quality life. One trial patient even returned to work. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound buying you $1.3450 and €1.1456. The price of gold is £2,786.88 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,251 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Well, here's the question. Have the lunatics once again taken over our asylum system? Because today it's emerged that foreign criminals deported from Britain after committing often serious offences, including murder.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive probiotic. All right, this is the MB40. This is a veggie cap version. And you can get the powdered version. I usually take the powdered version because I take a lot of different powders for my lunch. But you can get it in powder version or in the veggie cap. All right, both are very high quality probiotics. All right, take it every day, drink filtered water. Now, what the probiotic will do is improve your gut biome. When you improve your gut biome, a lot of positive things happen with your body. One, you'll be able to absorb your nutrients better. You'll be able to digest easier. The mucosal lining in your gut will increase. And the concentration of IgAs will increase. That's the antibody in your gut that you need for proper immune system at the gut level. You'll reduce leaky gut syndrome, and you'll improve the communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. Your metabolism will improve. You'll sleep better. You'll be detoxifying your central nervous system. You'll be consolidating memory. You'll be getting rid of brain fog. Lots of positive things happen, including the health of your skin. So please go to my store and get the very high quality probiotics. Now, the probiotics and the multivitamin are the foundation for the anti-aging protocol. Complete multivitamin are the multivitamins that you need for cofactors for enzymatic activity. When you have these cofactors, your enzymes will change shape and perform better in the cell. See, those enzymes, they're a certain shape, but when you have the cofactor, it opens it up or changes the shape in such a way where it'll perform better. It has higher efficacy for that enzyme. So your cells are going to perform better, your tissues, your organ systems will perform better. Super important. So that's the foundation. So please go get the complete multivitamin from my store and get the probiotics. By doing that and taking it every day, that's a foundation to slow down the aging process and to get your body into a healthier state So it's slowing down the aging process. Now, gladiator barley is a powder. It's a high density protein. This is a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. I mix it with soft foods like hummus. This will help you to build muscle when you do resistance training, but also detoxify your body, bring down inflammation. You'll recover quicker from your workout. But when you bring down inflammation at the vascular level, you're improving your vascular system. When you're bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, you're increasing the health of your neurons. You're protecting the myelin sheath of the neuron. When there's a lot of stress at the cerebral level, especially in the microenvironment of a neuron, it starts to die. Well, if neurons start to die, don't be surprised that you don't have memory. So it's important to keep inflammation down. And when you keep inflammation down, you're actually helping your immune system and you're helping your endocrine system, because chronic inflammation is immunosuppressive. So you want to bring down that inflammation. And it'll soak up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. This is a great way to slow down the aging process, to help you to control A1C levels. That's your blood glucose levels. And you are able to build muscle. This works really well with myotrol, which helps with the gene expression to build muscle. Well, the actual building blocks for the muscle, to build that muscle, is the gladiator barley, because it's a high density protein. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the gladiator barley, take it every day, detoxify that body. Super important. Super important. All right. Let's go to Bloomberg.
Here in Washington, even if it could be passed. President writes on Truth Social here, Putin and Russia are in big economic trouble, and this is the time for Ukraine to act. Does he mean militarily or something more broadly?
I think he's intentionally vague there, just as he's intentionally vague throughout these explanations. I think the other thing that, as I'm saying, secondary to the secondary sanctions, the second thing that is still an open question is on the security guarantees. Europe has so badly, and Ukraine especially, has so badly wanted the U.S. assurance that they will provide, that U.S. will provide security guarantees once the war is over. And that has been a very sticky question, and of course a non-starter for Putin in those talks. So as to your specific point about the economic implications and it's talking down the Russian economy, right. I mean, we'll have to see where that goes from there. But certainly on the military side, Trump also de facto gave his blessing for NATO members to shoot down Russian aircraft in their airspace. So while also saying we're not going to do it ourselves, or at least, under certain circumstances, we would provide support, but leaving that very vague to your point as well.
Michelle, you make a good point. I mean, how much is Putin kind of testing the resilience of NATO or the U.S. commitment to NATO,
yeah,
right?
For sure. That's such a big risk, Mark. And we heard from other European leaders over the past 24 hours, talking about the Russian airspace question or the Russian aircraft in their airspace question and what to do about it. You have, a very divisive NATO on this issue right now, and that's exactly what Russia has wanted, right? So I think the Germans have been, warning. This is, German Defense Minister Pistorius called it an escalation trap that Russia has set in terms of getting all these NATO countries fired up about being ready to go on the offensive if Russian aircraft invade their airspace. But then you have others on the other side. You have Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland kind of in the middle on this, but all talking about, yeah, we have the right to do so. If this happens again, like it did in Poland and Estonia, then we're going to shoot down these planes, and we should shoot down these planes. And then you have Trump saying, yeah, go for it. Good luck to you.
Yeah, we ran that past the president of Latvia on the program yesterday. He was with us as that headline broke from the UN, and didn't endorse the idea of shooting down Russian jets, but said we must give a show of force.
Yes.
And that could take on a lot of different forms, I suspect, in the weeks ahead. We've got about a minute left, Michelle. Do posts like these and this new mindset from President Trump encourage Putin to keep pushing that line? Should Estonia, should Poland be on guard?
I think we can expect from the Kremlin what we've heard in reaction to the post, more of the same, which is they're denying, of course, that these airspace incidents ever happened, or at least under the terms that the Europeans have said. So what part of what the Germans are warning is that if this happens again, if NATO shoots down some Russian aircraft, then the Russians will, have some leverage in saying, what happened here? Like, this didn't happen. You shot us down. This was innocent. Or, they'll tell a different reality. And in some ways, they might feel like they have the moral high ground to then point the finger at NATO and say, you're being on the offensive. What's going on? So it could play out in a very sticky way if we go forward in the way that some of the European leaders are talking about.
It's really remarkable stuff. Russia has a long history of playing with borders and international airspace. Our territory has
Zero helps me take my business anywhere I want.
Kids grow fast, and sometimes they just need more. With Carrot, it's simple to find what they need. Each handoff is a connection, and the real.
I don't want to turn this into an argument about one particular island off the northern coast of Estonia. If I stamp on your toe, I haven't attacked your toe, I've attacked you. Yeah. And that's how NATO should react to these.
Hello and welcome to Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. Now
All right,
today,
so they're going to talk about Putin under threat as Trump calls to shoot down Russian jets. Could be a game changer or trigger a NATO strike. But before I do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. This will help to target multiple systems. It'll help to target your heart and your vascular system and improve that. Help to improve your brain function. Improve your musculature. Rev up your metabolism and increase your energy levels. This is super important to take every day. And if you do calorie restriction and you take this, you're going to have all the energy you need, no spikes of energy, and it'll help you to lose weight safely. But if you're already at your target weight, you can continue to use this. Just maintain a proper diet. Now, with Boomer Boost, you can also use it as a pre-workout or a post-workout fuel source if you're an athlete. If this was available when I was doing triathlons, I would have taken this, but it wasn't available when I was doing triathlons. So Boomer Boost, very high quality, very, very high quality. It has a expansive compound profile shown on the screen here. Read the label on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this every day. It's a month's supply. Mix it with soft foods like how I do it with hummus or yogurt or even applesauce. Or you can mix it in a smoothie. You can put it in just filtered water or even with milk. But take it every day. And you're going to notice the benefits of this within 72 hours. You're going to have more energy. It's going to be a steady level of energy. You're going to be able to concentrate better. You're going to sleep better. You'll be able to build muscle faster. And you'll have lots of energy. So you're going to just have more vitality. And you're going to notice that within 72 hours. Now, when you take this long term, you're going to actually see the benefits of the anti-aging part of this. So stick to this, do it every day, do it for a year, and you're going to notice, wow, Paul's right. There is a slowdown of this aging process. But it's a holistic approach, taking the proper supplementation and the stacking, like I'm telling you throughout this video. Drink filtered water, stay away from processed foods, be cognizant of your sugar content, do resistance training, balancing exercises, stretching exercises, a little bit of cardio. Too many people just do cardio. That's bad. You should be doing more resistance training than cardio. And mindfulness or spirituality, learning new things, reading and writing and talking to people in the real world. Stay away from negativity and too much of the screen, the computer screen or the phone. Stay away from that stuff. And when you do that on a regular basis, you're going to actually notice that your cognitive function is improving, your cerebellum and its coordination with your body is improving. You're getting better sleep. Your endocrine system and your immune system is improving. Your cardiovascular fitness is improving. So please take my advice, take the Boomer Boost and apply a holistic approach, and you're going to slow down the aging process. It's all about a holistic approach here. When you do that, you're plugging into the complexity of your body and you're allowing for the body to heal. All right. It's not about taking any one supplement. The body doesn't work like that. It's taking multiple supplements and stacking them together in such a way that it's synergistic to target those main pressure points of aging. Another great supplement that you should be adding to your stack is resveratrol. Resveratrol will soak up free radicals because it's an antioxidant. It'll help the health of the mitochondria. Your energy levels will go up. This will help with youthful gene expression, especially at the basal layer of your skin. But youthful gene expression is enhanced. It helps to get rid of senescent cells. Stack this with NAD+, ubiquinol, C60, clarity factor, the Boomer Boost. The stacks, you get more benefits out of resveratrol when you stack it. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. All right, let's listen in to Times Radio.
1,310 of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation or full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We are at a point where the Russians have exceeded 1.1 million casualties. We're very privileged to be talking to an old friend of the show, Edward Lucas. Edward, I understand you're a writer and a consultant specializing in European and transatlantic security, and your expertise includes cybersecurity, energy, espionage, information warfare, all the sort of stuff that I'm in, Russian and foreign and security policy. And you're a former senior editor at The Economist and a senior fellow at the Centre for European Policy Analysis. I'm an old friend of the show. Welcome back.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Philip.
We've had an extraordinary 24 hours, in fact, less than 24 hours, as Donald Trump has stood up in the United Nations and that was, and had a meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine and seems to have changed his tune completely. What are you making of it?
It's black coffee time, isn't it? I sat down yesterday morning, Tuesday, to sketch out my Times column, which was a kind of long lament about the feeble European response to this series of airspace intrusions and other provocations that have been inflicted on us in recent days, which of course are nothing compared to what Ukraine is going through, but still pretty startling if you're just trying to use Copenhagen Airport. And then in the evening, the news broke of, first of all, Trump's speech, and then his meeting with Zelensky and his extraordinary post on Truth Social. And so that is, if not a game changer, certainly an eye-opener. And we have to parse it quite carefully and look at what's being said. It's really welcome to have some hawkish rhetoric from Trump. That's much better than dovish rhetoric. It's nice to see him dumping this lamentable sort of both sides, sometimes even worse than that, where he's accused Ukraine of starting the war. But in the end, what matters is deeds, not words. And there is not even the promise from Trump of tougher sanctions on Russia or more aid for Ukraine. So I think that in the end, we drink our coffee, but go back to the same problem that we've had before this 24 hours started.
But he hasn't withdrawn support from Ukraine. He's lauded the fact that European NATO nations are paying the United States for weapons. It seems, and it's always difficult reading between the lines of what Donald Trump says, but it seems between the lines he may have removed some of the restrictions that there have been on the use of US weapons inside Russia itself, and Ukraine is successfully attacking lots of Russian targets and Ukrainian manufactured weapons. But Donald Trump seems to be getting frustrated, and there's a better phrase, but frustrated at Vladimir Putin, possibly because Vladimir Putin is holding him back from being nominated properly for a Nobel Peace Prize. Are you seeing that frustration?
I think Trumpology is as weak and unscientific discipline as Kremlinology. I mean, we have to indulge in it a bit. And I think clearly the Alaska summit wasn't the great success that Trump was hoping for, and if he's going to get a Nobel Peace Prize for something, it probably won't be for fixing this war. And Putin has to some extent given him the middle finger, and all those play a role. But we also see that what was a security alliance based on shared history, shared interests, and shared values is turning into a kind of sort of insurance policy, or possibly just a buyer's club for weapons. And I'm delighted if the United States is continuing to sell weapons to European allies and to Ukraine in the quantity and quality that's desired. That's not at all the same as pitching in to defend Ukraine against Kremlin imperialism. So we have a sort of some gratifying nuances, but against a picture of a very big and unwelcome shift. The Atlantic reported this week that Elbridge Colby, the brains of the Pentagon, is saying don't sell scarce weapons to Europeans. We're going to need them in the Asia-Pacific region. So there's a lot going on here. And I think it's also important to underline that Ukraine is now a really serious weapons producer. What Ukrainians need more than anything else is money to produce even more of the excellent weapons they've got. And there may be some high-end intelligence or special bits and pieces they need. But the idea that the Ukrainians are grateful for every lump of Western equipment they get is years out of date now.
Well, it's interesting. Donald Trump, I think, may have come to realise that Ukrainians are actually very capable and are hitting lots of targets. And I think the amount of support that Ukrainians need from the United States is diminishing quite rapidly. And that's being recognised. But that political support is critical. And the other thing that Donald Trump came out with was a statement to say that NATO should shoot down Russian aircraft or missiles that go into NATO territory in the future, which again seems to be a very bold statement coming out. Do you think with the Shahad drone incursion into Poland, the MiG-31 incursion into Estonian airspace, we've now got drones coming from Russian contracted ships going into Copenhagen airport and possibly up into some of the Scandinavian airports. Do you think the response that we've seen from the international community and NATO has been sufficiently strong? Will Putin listen to it?
Well, evidently not, because these provocations are continuing. If we had done something that was really decisive at any point, either on those attacks you mentioned or many others in the past, Putin would be nursing his bruises and thinking, I'm not going to try that again. What they did to me really hurt. So clearly we're not doing enough. And I think it's worth having a bit of a historical perspective here. We are used to the United States being the great spine stiffener, the great cheerleader of European security. And what we're seeing from President Trump doesn't really bear comparison with John F. Kennedy going to Berlin in 1963 and saying, Ich bin ein Berliner. And it doesn't bear comparison with Ronald Reagan's Evil Empire speech of 83 or Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall. We are clutching at straws here. There was a big worry that the United States might be so gun-shy that they would tell Saka, the American general who's the supreme commander of NATO, not to shoot down any Russian warplanes with Russian people on board. Maybe drones are okay, but not a manned, crewed aircraft. But that would have been very worrying. You had some European allies thinking, well, maybe we need different chains of command. If it's in our airspace for 12 minutes, and we've got to get both Saka and perhaps also Prime Minister Meloni, if it's an Italian F-35 that's locked onto this intruder, and that's an awful lot of political decision-making in a very short space of time. So maybe we actually do need much shorter and tighter chains of command. And one thing I'm advocating in my column tomorrow, now that I've actually written it, is that we should change the rules of engagement so that the authority to shoot down these planes is decentralised and much lower. And that's still lacking. But I think the broader question is we don't want to turn this into an argument about one particular island off the northern coast of Estonia. If I stamp on your toe, I haven't attacked your toe, I've attacked you. And that's how NATO should react to these.
But we've had in the last 10 days 2 instances.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Get the lignans. This will help with your endocrine system and your immune system. Take this, especially in the fall and the winter. This will soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation. Super important to boost up that immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the lignins. Use discount 5.
Of NATO's Article 4 being called. Now that's unprecedented. And from a geopolitical perspective and from a NATO perspective, I'm both focused on Russian activity. Do you think Vladimir Putin's going to listen to what's effectively a collective finger waggling and stiff letter coming out of all of the NATO ambassadors? Or do we need to do something a little bit more firm and militaristic?
Okay, we do. And I think that these attacks should really be seen not as specific breaches of particular airspace or burning down a particular warehouse or beating up a particular individual. What they all have in common is they're attacks on our decision making. And they are there to expose weakness of will and disunity, both disunity between countries and disunity within countries. And we have, I think, to some extent fallen into a trap of saying that we'll respond to this with an Article 4 consultation, after which nothing happens. And Article 4 sounds quite imposing, as indeed does Article 5, until you invoke it, you have a meeting and then nothing happens. At that point it loses its sort of moral power. So I think it's what the most important thing for us is to get away from the idea that meetings and stern resolutions and reprimands have any kind of real force. What we need to do is to think what will persuade Putin not to do this again, and then think of several things that fall into that category and then do them. And this will be very risky and it will be painful and it will lead to escalation from the side of the Kremlin, because having taught the Kremlin not to take us seriously, we now have to teach the Kremlin that it does take us seriously. So it's going to be very unpleasant months ahead of us. We choose to do this, but there's no alternative.
So do you think these are deliberate acts by Vladimir Putin to try and test the political reaction and political resolve of the West, as well as the military reaction? And what do you think Putin, now sitting back and watching what's going on, is actually making of statements of the United Nations, of the NATO reaction, and what world leaders are saying?
Well, I think it's very informative for Putin. So he's seen, first of all, that there isn't the sort of American reaction that we would have seen 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, imagine if this had happened under George W. Bush or under Clinton or under Obama even, you would have had the Vice President or the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of State or several of them all flying into Europe. You would have had some serious swings to Russia and probably a sort of demonstrative reinforcement of the American military presence in Europe, and probably other things as well. And we haven't had any of that. So the first lesson for Putin is that America is basically disengaged from European security, except as an arms salesman. That's an important lesson. It's also very clear that some countries have the means to deal with this on their own. That's Poland, for example. That's really serious. It's also clear that Denmark, and I would argue also Sweden, are pretty clueless when it comes to these attacks on infrastructure. We heard a range of things going on in Sweden this year, which are not viewed through a national security lens. They're viewed as sort of possible outbreaks of hooliganism or just random acts of misfortune. And there's no strategic response to Sweden from them. That's all super useful for the Kremlin to know. There's also the difference in perceptions from countries that still take the United States very seriously and are hoping against hope that Trump's still going to be there for them, perhaps include Lithuania, and others which seem to have basically decided that America's a busted flush. And according to the excellent piece by Gideon Rachman in the FT this week, that would include Estonia, and perhaps the feeling is mutual. The Pentagon doesn't seem like Estonia very much. Now, these aren't set in stone, but these are all useful clues for the Kremlin. And they also will see that the public opinion is not very happy about these sorts of attacks, and they may think that they can bring home to the Danish population, for example, that the admirable policy of the Danish government in buying advanced weapons, reinforcing Bornholm, sending lots of weapons to Ukraine and so on and so forth, all this is going to have a very considerable cost of inconvenience for your average Dane, and that may start putting some pressure on the Danish government from below. I shall know more about this when I'm back from Copenhagen on at the end of the weekend. I'm flying there tomorrow.
Yeah, Copenhagen's a lovely city. The other thing, not
where I'm going.
The other thing that Putin has or will be watching is, Donald Trump. The one lever he could pull immediately is an economic lever, putting additional sanctions on Russia, taking action against the shadow fleet, taking action against those nations that are buying Russian oil and gas products, therefore putting further economic pressure on. But he's tied that to European nations stopping their import of Russian oil and gas products. Do you think that's a clever move by Trump to embarrass European nations, or is it a clever move by Trump to avoid making a difficult decision in dealing with the Russians and the Chinese and the Indians at a time when he's focusing on other things?
I think in the past it was more the former, and now it's more the latter. It was quite right of Trump to belabor the Germans for their appalling gas and natural gas dependency on the on Russian pipeline gas imports. And it's quite right to highlight what still needs to be done. Actually, the two countries that are most guilty of importing Russian oil are Slovakia and Hungary, which happen to be the ones where Trump has the most influence and Brussels has the least. And I think it's unrealistic to expect Europe to put 100% tariffs on all Chinese imports. So he's sort of demanding something he knows Europe won't do, in order that Russia, in the United States, doesn't have to do what it ought to do. But actually, most of what needs to happen is in European hands. Europe can deal with the shadow fleet. Europe can send more money to Ukraine. Europe can seize that $300 billion or 240 billion pounds of Russian central bank assets. And as my friend Hugo Dixon has outlined, use that as collateral for a big loan to Ukraine. And that would be a game changer if Ukraine had hundreds of billions of the frozen Russian assets. We here in Britain could start off just by actually doing something about the £2.5 billion from the forced sale of Chelsea Football Club. And every time I ask the government about this, they say we are working at pace, which is true. It is snail's pace, and so there's an awful lot we can actually do. I think the fundamental problem here is we don't have Russian tanks on our streets. This is not Tallinn 1940, where it's negotiating surrender. We have the ability to do anything we want to do. The only problem is political will. And we are flown from trying to find everybody to blame for the fact we don't have the political will that we need. We're blaming Trump because he won't do things when there's so much that we should do. We should just get on with it.
Yes, well, political pace is not measured by a stopwatch, it's measured by calendars, and multiple calendars.
Maybe a portable sundial would be helpful.
Well, yes, I think one that works through several winters as well would be good. But behind all of this, and behind the political rhetoric and everything else, there's this you move to try and get some military package that could come in if there's a peace agreement, the ceasefire agreement inside Ukraine. But underpinning any ceasefire agreement, I think what European nations want is some form of American backstop. And President Zelensky yesterday in the United Nations turned around and talked about the importance of a security architecture and the US backstop being there, providing that guarantee, but then sort of linked it to what had happened with the Budapest memorandum, and you bring it all together. And do you think that anything that is put down in writing as an international agreement, because of the fact that the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, and others have failed to live up to the international agreement and the Budapest memorandum, means that anything else on paper is just completely meaningless in the future?
Correct.
So what's the solution?
But I think we need to stop this sort of touching but deluded and actually quite damaging belief that we can solve this with bits of paper. And we've seen that NATO, which is the most solemn treaty-based security alliance imaginable, actually falls apart quite quickly when political things change and there are European countries that are de facto non-members of NATO, and the United States, as I argued earlier, is basically walking away, except perhaps as an arms salesman, in some sense, a provider of high-end intelligence. So in the end, it's about, do we have the political will? Are we willing to go to war with Russia to defend ourselves? That's the question. If we are willing to go to war with Russia to defend ourselves, then we should be supporting Ukraine to the hilt and supporting them right now, not after some ceasefire, but while they've got a chance of, yes, President Trump now says, regaining most or even more than their lost territories. The idea that we suddenly will gain the political will after some kind of arm-twisted ceasefire or armistice seems to be very odd. That our risk appetite will go down rather than up. We'll be even less willing to confront Russia, and anything we do deploy in Ukraine as some kind of tripwire or stabilization force is just a sitting duck for Russia to attack and expose our lack of defence and deterrence and those flaws in our decision making that I was talking about earlier.
We're seeing changes in Europe's approach to the United States. Lots of people are kowtowing to Donald Trump to try and keep him on side. We're also seeing Europe coming together in a way that I don't think we've seen beforehand. Do you see Europe adapting? Do you see Europe getting closer together from a geopolitical security perspective? I don't want to say defense perspective, because Europe has got NATO that provides it that defense umbrella for most European nations, not all. But is Europe coming together collectively? And do you think old political rivalries, national rivalries, are something that are becoming increasingly overcome, or are they still influencing decision making in an unhelpful way?
I think there's no one Europe, and I think we are seeing the outlines of a kind of post-NATO Europe, which may use some of the existing NATO structures if they're convenient and suitable, but will also be very clear that it doesn't want to depend on the United States any more than it has to, and ideally very little or not at all. And that's largely the North European countries. There's a bit of a question mark over France, there's a bit of a question mark still over Germany, although less now that we have Friedrich Merz in charge. And there are countries like Romania, which are for now very strong allies, and countries in the middle which are not allies at all, like Hungary and Slovakia. Big question mark over the Czech Republic with the elections coming up and so on. So it's a moving picture, and I don't think the cake is anywhere near baked yet. But I do think that the threat from Russia has basically consolidated Europe, even though it's proved to divide the Atlantic Alliance. And I also think that there's an important point that political polarization seems to go down in the face of geopolitical danger. And I was very pleased that this stonking row between the Polish Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, my friend Radek Sikorski, and the new president and his advisors, which was only 2 weeks ago, was lighting up Washington as they both went on rival visits to the United States, insulting each other on social media. There's nothing like those drone incursion to see Poland speaking with one voice. So now I think Putin looks at that and he thinks, okay, I need to be careful here. I need division within countries and division between countries. And there's plenty still around. There's plenty of, this latent hostility between Lithuania and Poland for historical reasons. There's latent hostility between Poland and Germany for historical reasons. There's all sorts of other worries and difficulties. And Putin is always looking for those divisions, whether they're historical, linguistic, ethnic, religious, demographic, regional, whatever. If he sees a division in a country, he will go in there and try and exploit it. And I think that we need to think not just about the cohesion of our existing, in particular our new alliances, but also our cohesion inside countries, our political and social cohesion. Because in the end, when we're facing these sub-threshold attacks, disruption, clandestine or overt attacks on energy, transport, information, payment systems, whatever, that's when resilience and the cohesion it relies on become particularly important.
Well, you talked about all the divisions that you see across Europe, and if ever there was a time when we see increasing almost civil unrest in some countries, we're seeing other geopolitical issues around the world being focused on the cities, our European cities, with demonstrations and everything else. Do you think Putin sees this as an opportunity? Has he got his fingers in that pie and is stirring it deliberately because it's something he's always been good at and trying to create that and maintain that division? Or do you think he's just watching the circumstances that would have been there anyway and watching them with glee?
I think it's both. I mean, I don't think he invents these divisions, but where he can, he exploits them. And we've seen him supporting the far left, supporting what used to be the core thing of the far left, which is anti-Americanism. That was a bit different now. It's Trump, but he supports the far left, he supports the far right. he also supports what I might call the greedy middle. Those big companies that just love to get their snouts back in the troughs of pleasure houses in Moscow. And he will support any other thing that looks like can be helpful. He was supporting biker groups at one point because they were sort of somehow ideologically aligned. He supported people who like gun clubs. There's been all sorts of things, and often these are basically intrinsically quite innocent expressions of social or political identity. And there are many good reasons why people might want to vote for a left-wing party or a right-wing party. They're not all Putin stooges. But there's often something there that Russian, or for that matter, other intelligence services can get in and exploit. And I think there's no political force is completely immune from this. There's always the whiff, the lure of money, buying assets. So we have to be far more vigilant than we have been. And I think accept that this is not a problem that's going to be over quickly. We are facing a generational struggle now with Russia, which has this imperialist, chauvinist thinking absolutely baked in. It's going to be there for many years to come.
And that's what's affecting us. Inside Russia itself, the one thing that I think Vladimir Putin is most scared of is an opposition rising up amongst the people of Russia against him. But he's managed to shield them from the conflict up until a couple of months ago. And Ukraine's attacks on the Russian oil and gas infrastructure seems to be having a huge impact on Russia's ability to put fuel in its own cars and is bringing the war home to the Russian people. Do you think that's a significant move?
Well, I'm always very careful about this idea that we have a kind of Wunderwaffe, a magic weapon that's going to suddenly be a game changer. And history suggests that it's happened once in 1945 against Japan, but that's the exception, not the rule. So I would love to say that the Ukrainian flamingo is now going to be Ukraine's V2 and deal devastation with Russia. But in the end, the V2 didn't save the Third Reich. So I think we need to be a bit careful about that. I think the big point is that we shouldn't personalise this about Putin. Our problems with Russia predate Putin. I was writing about these issues back in the 1990s when we were widely ridiculed and ignored for worrying that there was going to be any problem with Russia. And if Putin goes, which he will eventually, I think we'll continue to have problems. But the shape of the problem may change, but this fundamental, as Radek Sikorski put in his speech at the UN General Assembly, inability to live in peace with its neighbours, that's very deeply baked in, and we're going to have to be dealing with that for years, decades to come.
Well, dealing with that decades to come. Now you've got a column in the Times tomorrow. What are the main points coming out of that?
Everything we've talked about just now, but with a few jokes thrown in.
Excellent. We look forward to a few jokes thrown in, and unfortunately, we're going to be talking about this for a long time to come. But
black humour.
Black humour is the best humour that there is. Being ex-military, it is what keeps us going. But Edward, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today for Time Zero Frontline.
Excellent.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like access to exclusive content, please subscribe to Time Zero membership and watch us on YouTube. But you can now get us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And don't forget, you can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs and read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.
Our tip, Vienna trip. Every flight, pure delight. Culture time, always fine. Fly non-stop to Vienna. Book now on Austrian.com. Austrian.
Mr. Boots.
It's okay. I'll just grab the backup sticks. Backup sticks? How do you afford that money bag?
The lowest prices of any national grocery store.
Well, fair enough.
It's an all thing.
Attacking the oil refineries, which, it depends who you listen to, but, an average figure seems to be that they've destroyed about 20% of Russia's ability to refine and produce fuel, and a lot of it for domestic consumption. And you don't have to look deep into social media to see massive queues of cars trying to get fuel, and that's if there is any fuel available. Even I understand in St. Petersburg, it's very difficult to get fuel. And, this is really, not only is it cutting off the sort of foreign currency of selling all this stuff outside Russia, but actually it's really beginning to hit the rank and file. And I think that's really clever because it is the rank and file at the moment who seem to be the only ones who might have an influence on what Putin and the Kremlin does next.
Hello and welcome to Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. Today on day 1,309, I think it is, of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation of full scale.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ashwagandha root. This is going to help to control your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels. It'll help to boost up your immune system. And turmeric. Turmeric soaks up free radicals, brings down pro-inflammatory cytokines, helps the immune system and your cardiovascular system. Stack these together for a powerful stack to help your immune system and your cardiovascular system. And take this, especially in the fall and winter, to help you in your immune system. Very important. Also, vitamin D3 and K2, it's dual purpose. You do resistance training, taking calcium, it'll help you to build denser bone. Taking D3 and K2 together will help with your cardiovascular system. It'll help to pull some of that calcium depositing out and reduce calcium depositing around plaque. And D3 and K2 will actually reduce the severity of what will be happening in the fall and the winter. So you better be prepared. Get the vitamin K2 and the D3 from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And C60. Trump threatens to sue ABC over Kimmel return. Interesting. Let's listen into that.
Earlier this year, just a conservative stance on free speech. How surprising is it that there haven't been just this groundswell of voices to speak out from that side as well?
I think anytime the president does something that is, pretty, I'd say, objectively egregious, you do have a handful of people who say, oh, that's problematic, but not enough that it makes, because again, we're in election cycle almost every other year. House members, especially, they are constantly looking towards their reelection with a 2-year term. And so how much they want to push against Trump. And I remember from even during his first term, if we responded and reacted to every single thing that the president said, did, tweeted, posted, whatever it may be, that was a full-time job that no one could achieve and could keep up with. It was just really hard to keep up with it. So they have to choose when they're going to stick their head out and say, that's a problem. I see that being not constitutional, or I see it being a problem long-term. Big picture, when the tides have turned and you may not appreciate what you're saying now because it may come back to bite us, bite us. So I think that's part of the problem here is that members are cautious because they have to think about re-election, but also it's just too much to combat any given day.
And Jean, just going back to you, how does Schumer, is he running a risk here? He and Schiff and other Democrats, are they running a risk here of just staying on this issue?
Perhaps the best one to tell you about who lives here would be me. Brought here lovingly back in 93. And
welcome back. America's top economic leaders attending the prolific growth summit today. This one-day exclusive conference in Indianapolis brings together business executives, entrepreneurs, investors, and stakeholders in an effort to push forward American innovation. The conference is featuring 6 innovation studios, workshops, and speeches from top business leaders. There's even a pitch competition where the winner could get $5 million in seed funding. My next guest is delivering the keynote speech today. Joining me now is O'Leary Ventures Chairman Kevin O'Leary. Kevin, great to see you. This conference was made for you.
Great to you. It sure is. We celebrate American entrepreneurship innovation. I've said this 1,000 times, Maria. Our number one export's not energy or technology, it's the American dream. And right today, the center of the American dream is right here in Indiana.
It's funny because we just went to Mike Milton's Center for Advancing the American Dream. A lot of conversation about the American dream and how to get it. Tell me what you're expecting from the conference today.
Well, you know, what really has taken so much to understand since the pandemic is the role of social media in business, particularly in entrepreneurial startups. The idea of acquiring customers using social media, platforms like TikTok and Instagram, if you don't know how to do that now, Maria, you can't really survive. It's customer acquisition costs, CAC, and ROAS, return on ad spend. We're going to talk a lot about that today. How to tell a story, how to describe your product, how to create a community that becomes your advocates, how to get more customers direct at higher margins. And that's why the markets are all-time highs. Large S&P 500 companies have figured out social media. Their margins are up almost 15% since pre-pandemic. We got to teach that to the startups now.
Well, look, you mentioned TikTok. The president saved TikTok for a fourth time now. As this deal to divest its U.S. operations is underway and the talks continue with China. The U.S.-based version of the app will be majority American-owned, with ByteDance holding less than 20% of the stock. The president is set to sign an executive order this week to nail down the deal, and tech giant Oracle is leading the oversight, algorithm, and the security of the U.S. version with Silver Lake as a major investor. Kevin, are you comfortable with this, that this is going to be American and we won't have data going to China?
This is all on Larry Ellison's shoulders now. He is going to be caretaker, if you want to call it that, of the data packs coming off that server, the one in Paris, Texas, and those in Virginia. I think he'll do it well. I think people will be confident. I think the upside of nailing the messaging and getting the staffers of the China Hawks and the Senate on board with this plan is that the people that have not gone on TikTok, because we have 172 million on the platform now, I think could go up 30%. Maria, if you knew with certainty your data was safe, staying on American servers, and she can't see it or anybody in China gets access to it, you'd probably download the app again. That's the whole point.
So what does, do we know, I'm going to ask Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this, but what does ByteDance have access to then, since it's 20% holder of the stock?
Well, they're not going to have access to the data in the same way they do now. They're not going to be able to use TikTok as a propaganda machine anymore. It can't be spyware. Ellison will rip all that out of the code as he's instructed to, or face an $805 billion fine, which has been written into the law. The key is interpreting the law as set forward by Congress and upheld by the Supreme Court. And that law was written by the staffers of these senators. So they're not stupid, they understand it. So Ellison's team will have to go in, sit down with them and say, here's our proposal. They'll approve it. There'll be a transition period. The key is to keep the platform fruitful for the entrepreneurs. There's about 7 million of them, generating somewhere between $15 and $17 billion. I call them the Shark Tank Nation. They use the platform to create businesses, and that's what Trump is trying to keep going. But China's going to have to give this up as a propaganda weapon.
Yeah.
And they're willing to do it because it's a trade-off. They're getting a deal from Trump, and Trump is successful in getting Xi to become a seller. He wasn't, 48 hours ago, he wasn't a seller. Now he is.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Should we trust it, Kay?
I want to say that we want to trust it, Kevin, right? I do say that we do want to trust it, but I'm still skeptical, right? I'm just skeptical of where this data is going, who's got control of it, who shows what. And there's a whole generation of people that don't seem to care. I tend to be in that generation that, I'll remain a little skeptical.
Well, we'll see. Well, we'll see.
Well, I like that attitude because you're a user. We want to win over on this platform.
Right.
I mean, I'm an advocate for it because all my businesses use it. It's the most, it's actually the lowest cost of customer acquisition in America. It's going to be the prize. The number of people interested in this cap table, including me, everybody wants a piece of TikTok. It's going to become a powerful American television network with an already proven advertising model. Right. You don't see that very often. It only comes around every few generations. So here we go.
So let me move on to the mayoral race. Now less than 2 months away. A new Suffolk University City View poll shows Democrat Socialists Zoran Mamdani still with a commanding lead in this race, 45%. Andrew Cuomo is at 25% in that poll. Republican Curtis Lee is at 9%, and incumbent Mayor Eric Adams is at 8%. Kevin, I know you've got plans to have dinner with everybody. You recently had dinner with Mayor Adams. You plan to meet with every candidate here. What have you learned, and what is this process that you're doing?
Well, first of all, Maria, it's New York. No other place like it. And there's 7 weeks to the election. And in New York, poo-poo happens all the time. You just don't know what's going to happen until it's done. So last night, in my sort of tour of the colonies, as I call it, I had dinner with Adams. We went out to Rayo's, a classic New York location. Part of doing this is to see how voters and constituents react to the politician. They loved him. In a classic New York location, everybody wanted a selfie. They applauded him when he came in. And the thing I found so interesting about him, I bet you it was his third dinner last night to meet with me. He had a salad with no dressing on it. Now that's discipline. That's total discipline. And he was very cordial. And I can report as of last night, which is the #1 issue on this candidate, he is not planning on dropping out of the race. So let the games begin.
Well, he's not planning on dropping out of the race. And let's do the math, Ashley. He's not planning on dropping out of the race. Curtis Leo says he's not planning on dropping out of the race. Andrew Cuomo's certainly not going to drop out of the race. So what did happen? Mamdani went.
Yeah. Yep. And Kevin and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, it's going to be a disaster for New York City, but I don't know. I mean, the egos here are just, too big. Kevin, you couldn't talk him into it?
That was not the tone of the meeting, and that certainly wasn't the vibe he was picking up from all of those constituents that just loved him. I mean, imagine his dilemma, because, ratings really matter, obviously, and when you see these people supporting him, I can understand.
There's no way he's going to
win. Drop out, not to have a chance of winning. You don't know what's going to happen, particularly in New York. Now, look, it looks grim, I get it. And this would be very bad for one of the world's largest capitals of capital, but it ain't over yet. And I think my next stop is Cuomo. We'll talk to him about it too. But I feel by meeting these people, Adams is pro-business. I can report that back too. He's not changing much in policy. He believes you've got to have return for investors to invest in low-cost housing. No one's going to put their dough up, Maria. If rental rates are capped, there'll be no returns.
All right.
So I think it's kind of the messaging like we're talking about now.
So do you think Adams has any shot of winning?
No.
Having spent that time with him just hours ago, thank you, ladies, for putting me at this. I'm not going to call the race. I'm going to let it. Listen, the important thing is I want people to understand. He's not dropping out. Okay, so everybody get over it.
Okay, he's not dropping out. We're gonna let it play out.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of Mayor Adams.
He's done better. He did better on the border for the end of his term. Kevin, thank you. Have a great time at that conference, Kevin O'Leary. Don't miss Charles Payne's live coverage from the prolific Growth Summit today. You'll probably see more of Kevin there. That begins at 2.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. You can get it in extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, and avocado oil. C60 needs to be in a lipid. C60 is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. One molecule of C60, 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C molecule. They'll soak up free radicals. You take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach for best absorption. It needs to be in a lipid because it's lipid soluble. And when you do this every day, you're going to notice that your energy levels are improving, your immune system and your endocrine system improves. You're soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, so you're reducing plaque formation. You're helping your neural health. You're reducing stress in the neuron. You're improving the mitochondria of your cells, including your neurons. So you have more ATP for your neurons. You're going to have better neuroplasticity over time. Your body will perform better. So please take this every day. It'll also improve your basal layer for your skin so that your skin cells will be healthier. Take this every day, teaspoon a day. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. But it's important to take it every day. And what you'll notice within 1 year that you physically look younger than your before picture. Within 2 months, you're going to start feeling the effects, the positive effects. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take the C60. It also it reduces the free radicals when you're working out. So you'll recover quicker after your workout. So it's important to take before your workout if you do an intense workout. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. That free gift is super important for the fall and the winter, trust me. So that's the end of my broadcast. Please go to my store. Make sure you get the great supplements I offer, especially the ones that will help you in the fall and the winter. Can't say that enough. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.